Okay. Anything exciting happen?
No, I dreamed all night about scrapes.
Did you? Good.
Yeah, I know.
Love it.
I'm getting sleep.
So you're saying you're going to be falling asleep?
Oh, God.
Well, any questions? Nothing. I got to do a better job of leaving stuff out to force you to have to ask questions, right? All right then. Well, so what we're going to do today, then we're going to get into talking about the listing side of things now. So yesterday was kind of more about how to do a buyer interview. Today we're going to get into talking about the seller side of things. So really, probably where I would want to start with this is first by asking you a question of what's your job?
Leader.
To be a leader, okay, and the number one skill of a leader is? Communication. Okay, good. So keep in mind that, and we talked a little bit about this actually, that as a leader, what is it that you are, what is it that a leader really does? What is leadership?
Influence.
Good job, yes, exactly right. It's just to influence, right? Okay, so now with that being said, here's how I want you to think about a listing presentation. So we're going to jump into and we're going to dive into doing the listing presentation, what it looks like and all those things. But kind of as a precursor to that is think of it this way, is that there's two parts to the listing presentation. So the first part of a listing presentation, well actually really any presentation, this is true, but specifically since we're talking about listing presentation, the first part of it is to get them to choose me. So the first thing that we are trying to accomplish on this listing presentation is we've got to get them to first choose me. Meaning that they decide I'm going to be the agent that they trust, that they feel like can get the home sold, that they want to have help them. So our first objective is we've got to get them to choose me. Once they have chosen me, then at that point we can then together choose the price. So when I say then we can together choose the price, part of what I'm referring to in that is both the price that they're going to list the home for, but also even just the price of the commission, all that kind of stuff. So prior to them choosing you, the price really doesn't matter. Meaning if they're not going to choose you to be their agent, does it matter what your commission is? No, because they're not going to use you anyway, so you're not going to charge them anything, basically. So, same thing with if they're not going to choose you, should they really rely on what you think the price of their home should be? And why? Yeah, because clearly they didn't think, and this might be a little harsh, but clearly they didn't have enough respect to want to use you, so why should they trust your opinion of price, really, to some extent, right? Okay, so our first objective in this process is we want to get them to choose me, then together we'll choose the price. Now, how do we get them to choose us, though?
We have to persuade them, influence them.
Good, I love it. And how are we going to do that?
Create value.
Good, I love where you're going with it. Good. So I was kind of hoping that you guys would pick up on the connection of what we've been talking about. So there's 6 things that are going to happen for them to choose me. So to get them to choose me, now you've heard 3 of these already. So what's the first?
Connect.
That's right. So the first thing that we've got to do is we've got to connect with them. Or another way of saying it is I need to build some rapport. There's got to be rapport there, okay? So we've got to connect, or there's got to be some type of rapport there. Okay, good. What else do you think would have to happen for them to want to choose me? Well, you already said about the other one.
Create value.
So next would be create value. What else would have to happen?
Close.
Okay, good. So we've talked about those 3 already. There's 3 others though. So in order for them to choose me, now, and to some extent, the other 3 maybe could be subsets of some of this, but ultimately is we've got to connect with them, we got to create some type of value, and we got to close. Now, the other things that have to happen though for them to choose me is they need to trust me. Now, so that's, to some extent, you could say, well, that is a subsection of the connecting, but they've got to trust you. They've got to have some type of trust that you know what you're doing. Now, then the fifth thing, which is somewhat related, but is they also need to then feel safe. So in order for them to choose you, you're going to have to connect, you got to have them trust you, they've got to feel safe. Here's how I think of the difference for me. Because when I first started hearing this, I kind of was like, well, what's the difference between feeling safe and trust? Like, they're kind of the same thing. And they somewhat are, although I guess what I would say is they've got to trust you, and the trust is about you, the safe is how they feel. Meaning, so because they trust you, they feel safe. Does that make sense, what I'm saying? So they've got to trust you, and then because they trust you, they're then going to feel safe. When somebody feels safe, since your job is to be what? A leader. When they feel safe, they'll allow you to lead them. So we've got to get them to feel safe, and part of getting them to feel safe is they've got to trust you. Okay? And then the sixth thing of this is we need to we've got to separate ourselves. So so keep in mind, as we're going to go through what we're going to talk about today, the pieces that we're going to go through, there's two sides to it. One is choose me, the other is together, then we'll choose the price. On the choose me side, what's got to happen is we've got to have some type of rapport, a connection. We've got to help them to trust us so they can feel safe. Once they've done that, we're going to create value. Part of how we're going to create value is by separating ourselves from the competition. So we've got to separate. Because here's why. If you don't separate yourself from the competition, in their mind, what does that mean?
You're all the same.
You're all the same. Therefore, how should they make their decision? If we're all the same, how would you make your decision?
Best commission at
Lowest commission.
That's right. Usually then it's going to come down to who's the cheapest. Because in their mind, so it's back to the analogy I gave you before. If a Hyundai and a Mercedes were exactly the same, meaning the only difference was the emblem that was put on the car, but the prices still were like they are right now. You have the Hyundai price down here and Mercedes up here, but they're the exact same car, they just have a different symbol. Exact. Which one are you going to buy? Does that make sense? Guess that's what happens here. If on a listing appointment they think you're all the same, therefore, how should I choose?
Price.
So part of what we've got to do is separate ourselves and show them we're not all the same. When you list your home with me, you're getting a better quality agent. You're going to get better results. Does that make sense? When you do that, see, all of this has to take place before we get into price. Because if you don't, let me give you an example. So how are you going to respond to this? And I'm not choosing any particular person, but somebody share with me. So you're on the phone prospecting. Let's say for sale by owners. So that lady yesterday that George was on the phone with. So what's your commission? How do you answer that?
I don't remember, it's 8, 7, 6, depending on how much you want to, what type of service.
Okay, so let's assume then that I'm a for sale by owner, you're the agent, you've called me on the phone, we're talking and I say, so Lori, what's your commission? What are you going to charge me?
Well, I can do this for 8%, I can do this for 7%, and I'll do this for 6%. Which one would you choose?
Well, I thought it was 4 or 5, so I wouldn't choose any.
Well, if you 4%, then you won't get the same type of care that I would
Okay,
provide.
so I'm going to pause you for a second. I'm going to rewind to where I started. There's 2 pieces to this. Choose me, then together we'll choose the price. So I kind of set you up a little. For me, over the phone, don't talk price on the phone. The reason is you haven't had a chance to separate yourself. Does that make sense? So if they say, so how do we want to answer it if over the phone I'm saying, so What's your commission?
We can discuss it after we meet.
So, yeah, good. I'm gonna rephrase what you said, but I love it. What are you saying, Carmen?
I was just gonna say, why do we set an appointment so we can sit down?
Good,
and
you're
talk
right, yeah,
about it?
that's, I thought that's what you were saying, that's why I'm like, what? See, you set the back, so I can't, you're
I
like,
can't believe you heard that.
I know, you're the low producer now, you're in the back. I'm just, so I'm just teasing. So, that's the very reason we need to get together, because I can then show you what I do that makes me different than every other agent, now what works best. So yeah, we wanna schedule the appointment. When, hey, what's your commission that you charge? You know, that's the very reason we need to get together, is so that we can sit down and discuss what it is you wanna accomplish. Well, but let's say they press you. Well, yeah, but I'm not sure I wanna get together if I don't like your commission. So what's your commission gonna be, Tony?
That's the very reason why we should get together and discuss.
Okay, good, I love it. But what if they keep pressing you? Well, no, but come on, like, I mean, give me an idea. What's your commission? What is it, Ed?
I wouldn't know how to answer.
Okay, well, you're going to now, okay? So here's the thing. Just keep in mind this. I'm not gonna talk price with them till I know they've chosen me. So, let's reverse it. Somebody asked me.
What's your commission rate?
So, you know, Tony, that's the very reason we need to get together, is so that I can hear more about what it is you want to accomplish, and then I can walk you through the process, and we'll together come to an agreement on what we'll charge you in terms of commission. So what works better, afternoons or evenings? Keep pressing.
I'd really like to know what your general commission rate is before we get together.
Yeah, sure, that totally makes sense. If I were you, I would want to know that as well. So, you know, honestly, it varies. So it could be as low as 0, but it could be as high as 10%. That's the very reason we need to get together, so that we can talk about what it is we want to do and how you want to best go about it and what's going to net you the most amount of money. So now, which works better for you, afternoons or evenings?
I'd like to just find out what a general commission rate is. I'm fairly new.
Okay, sure, yeah, I can understand that. And you know what, actually, there's no such thing as a general commission rate. That, the government won't let us do that, it would be price fixing, so they're totally negotiable. So, the good news is, it's negotiable. We'll sit down and hear what it is you want to accomplish, and then together we'll come up with an agreement. Here's what I'll tell you. If we can't come to an agreement on the commission, I won't list your house, so. Which works better for you, afternoons or evenings?
Afternoons.
Okay, so does that make sense? So, look, but like, I'm not kidding, like, do not give them a price. You know, I have no idea, Tony. Until we get together, like, until we can sit down and talk about what it is. Well, what do you usually charge? Well, I usually charge somewhere between 0 and 10%, but again, it depends on what you're wanting to do. So, you know, it could be as low as 0. So, I don't know, let's find out.
Would 0 be if they don't choose you?
That's right. You got it. The only way I'm gonna charge you, I'm gonna charge you 0 if I come out there and decide not to list your house or you don't want me to. Then it's gonna be 0 is what I'm gonna charge you for me coming out. So, yeah. But then it could be as high as 10%. I mean, I don't know. Depends on what you wanna do. Let's find out. How soon can we get together so we can talk more about it? So you're just gonna keep, well, give me just like an indication, like you gotta get me closer than that. Then maybe I would say, I don't know, it could be 4%, could be 8%, I mean, I might narrow it down like that, you know, somewhere between 4 and 8. Which 6 would be between 4 and 8, right? So, so somewhere between 4 and 8%, it depends, like, ultimately, I need to see your house, I need to see what's gonna be the best marketing tactic that we take to get your home sold. And it may be that we need to charge an 8% commission to get it sold, maybe that we only do a 3%, who knows?
What if you're a new agent, you don't have any, they're gonna ask you, you know, what have you done before? And you're gonna say, nothing.
0%.
Going back to my little sleazeball drug dealer.
Well, so here's the thing, so here's the one thing I would say, in terms of that, I would stick with, I've spent my whole life selling, you had to sell your wife to marry you, you had to sell your parents to buy your stuff, like, I've been selling my whole entire life, so in terms of the number of deals that I've done, you know, we as a company last year, we sold over 2,000 homes or whatever. Do you know how many Troop did last year, Liz?
Oh, gosh, I don't know,
It's
but
probably 3,000 or.
a lot.
Yeah, I'll bet around 3,000 homes. So, we sold over 3,000 homes last year. Well, how about you personally? Well, none, but the good news is, why would it be an advantage to have you be their agent if you've never sold a house?
Because you're hungry and you want to sell it so badly.
That's right. I mean, and that's how I would approach it. If it really came down to that, I would just say, look, you know what? The good news is, you're gonna be my very first, and you know what? The last thing I would ever wanna have happen is to have my very first deal go bad. Like, I'm gonna give you all my time and effort, probably more than I should even. Like, you can count on, like, I'm getting it right. So, that, and if they still are like, well, we really feel like we need somebody more experienced, great, you know what, I've got a great partner, her name's Liz, I'll get you connected with her, she'll help me out with it. And then you go find an agent and say, hey, will you co-list this with me? And team up on it, so, does that make sense? Yes. Okay, so, back to this, so choose me, so we gotta connect, we gotta create value, close, so everything that we're gonna be doing now, so this is kind of the groundwork for what we're gonna talk about. Everything that we're doing from this point forward is about getting them to choose me. And I am, now on the presentation, I am not going to talk price. So let's say I walk into the for sale by owner. Hey, so what price are we gonna, okay, so you said you'd tell me once you got out here and saw the house. Now you've seen the house, what's the price? How much are you gonna charge me? Well, I don't know yet. We gotta put together a plan. Let's figure out what you wanna do. So let's talk about that. And then I would jump right into the presentation, which we'll do in a second. But if they kept, well, what's the price, what's the price, what's the price? I'm gonna stop and go, okay. I guess the first question is, are you comfortable and confident that I'm gonna be the agent that you would use to sell your home? Well, no, not yet. Okay, well then we first gotta get to that. Because really, and then I would say this to them, does it really matter what price I'm gonna charge if you don't think I'm the agent to help you? Meaning, let me ask you guys this. Let's say, for real, that I told you, I'll list your home for free. But you don't trust me. Would you list your home with me? Why not? It's free.
Trust is more important.
Okay, good. So I want you to see that is like, that's where you need to kind of go with this person is, hey, are you comfortable and confident that you want me to help you get your home sold? Well, I'm not sure yet. Okay, great. Well then let's first deal with that before we worry about the price. And I just tell them, we'll come to an agreement on price. We'll work that out. So you don't have to worry about that. Let's first figure out, am I really the right one for you? So, because until we know that, the price doesn't matter. Because if you decide I'm not the agent, even if I was doing it for free, you wouldn't want me. So we first got to figure out if I'm the right agent. Am I driving that point home enough to you guys? Don't tell them the price until you found out if they've chosen you, okay? All right, so now let's jump into this. So in terms of our presentation, so when you first get to the property, you want to do something that we call, so this number one is going to be TAP. What does that stand for? I'll help you out.
Thank you.
Appreciate.
Thank, acknowledge,
Yeah, or
Acknowledge and promise.
and then promise. So I want to thank them, I want to acknowledge, I want to promise, and you can use some humor along the way if you want to. So we want to thank, we want to acknowledge, we want to promise. So when I get out there, I'm going to say, so, Ed, thanks for having me come out. You know, man, as I was walking up, I can tell how much care and concern you put into your yard. I mean, the front of it, the curb appeal is awesome. I mean, when we put your home on the market, that is going to be a huge selling point for getting your home sold. You've done a great job with taking care of your home. And I promise you that when I leave here in 4 hours, like, you're going to have some good information. Yeah, it's a joke.
4 hours.
That's the sprinkling in some humor. They might be like, what, 4 hours? You said it was going to be 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah, so I just want to thank them. Hey, thanks for letting me come out. Wow, you've done a great job with the house. Now, in the event there's nothing to acknowledge about the house to them, you know, like your landscaping looks good, oh yeah, I can tell you freshly painted, whatever. Like, do some type of acknowledgement, but even if there's nothing, it's a dump, then you can just at least acknowledge, hey, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule or life to sit down with me. Like that lady that George was on the phone yesterday with, that for sale by owner, like, hey, I really appreciate, I know how busy you are, you know, you made that really clear, how busy you are, and so I know a real impact for you to be willing to do this, and just thanks for taking the time to do it. So we wanna acknowledge them. But then I also wanna promise, hey, at the end of my presentation, whether we end up working together or not, I'm gonna give you some really good information that should help you in getting your home sold. Sound good? Okay. Now, so once I've done the thank, acknowledge, and promise, then I wanna look at the house. So I'll just say preview here, but I'm gonna go look at the house. Okay, so I'm gonna go walk through the home. Now, there's two lines of thinking on this, and there's advantages and disadvantages to both, so I'll just let you decide what you wanna do. But in terms of going and looking at the house, so now I'm there, I thank, acknowledged, and promised, hey, I wanna take a look at the home. Now, you can either have them show you through the home, which there's an advantage and a disadvantage to that, or you can just say, I want to explore your home through the eyes of a buyer, so let me go walk through the house, and then I'll just come back and meet you here in the kitchen, and we'll sit down and talk about it. Now, what would be the advantage to walking through the home to preview it with them? Arminda?
When you walk with the owners, they're gonna start talking about, when we upgraded this, we spent 40,000, you know, this and this and that.
Speaking of that,
And,
last night on the phone with my wife, I told you guys that we redid, she's like, I'm so sick of our bathrooms, we need to remodel the bathroom. I was like, oh. Anyway, sorry, keep going.
and for example, if you see some, you know, leaks or some, you know, something that you see bad on the ceilings or walls or something, then you can write it down, I don't know.
Okay, good, yeah, no, you're right on. So good, so one of the advantages could be that they're gonna point stuff out to us so that we know it, that's, which could be good, what else? What else would be good about having them walk us through the property?
You start to build a rapport with them.
That's right, it gives you a chance to start to connect with them and to get some rapport. So, and actually I wanna pause on one of the things she said, cause I love the idea. When I'm walking through with them, and I don't see any here, but let's, you know how sometimes on these you might see a water stain or something? Like if I saw one, I would walk over like this and be like, huh, what happened here? And by doing that, they're like, oh, yeah, so no, we're actually gonna fix that. Like, so to some extent, it gives you the chance to, and honestly, it helps to, when it comes time to talk price, if you've kind of noticed some little, oh, like what's this on the wall here? Like, that's interesting, what happened there? Like, by doing that, kind of helps, because typically you go to talk price and their house is the best one in the neighborhood, right? Which we'll talk about that later, but, so one of the advantages can be you're building a connection, the other is you can start to, I don't want to say beat up the house, because it's not like I'm trying to beat it up, but I also am pointing out it's not perfect by doing that, but it also allows me to, if I see something that I think they should fix, that's what I'll do. Ooh, like, so what happened here? Oh, well, just the table bumped up against the wall, and oh, okay, well, that would be something we probably ought to get fixed, and then I'll point out the little things like that. Now, what would be the downside, though, to having them walk you through the property?
They could be argumentative about everything that you might point out.
Okay, cool. What else?
Might be distracting for you to actually get a feel for the house if you're just
Good.
sitting with them.
Good, love it. What else?
Because you, like you said, I can see it through the eyes of a buyer. So you really kind of, you're focused on looking at it like a buyer would look at it.
Good.
Not really so much connecting with them right now.
Very good, love it. What else? There's at least one more thing that could be a downside to it.
They don't feel safe, about your thinking about the house and that you're gonna be listing it.
So, I'm not sure. What you
I'm
mean.
not sure yet.
I don't know what I mean either, right?
I would say there's a stranger that we just met and we're letting them walk around our house by himself.
Dare you say something
Okay.
about my house?
Okay.
They might feel insulted.
Okay, good, sure. So, and how about, are you gonna do it faster walking through by yourself or with them showing you?
By yourself.
That's the other one that would be the downside, is that if they walk you through, it's gonna, especially now, keep in.
4 hours.
That's right, keep in mind, yeah, it will be 4. Keep in mind, if you've told them, hey, I'm just gonna take 30 minutes, if they walk you through the house, that could take up, depending on the person, a lot of that time. So to some extent, that could be it. So now, The advantage to walking through by yourself, you guys have already hit on, like I get to explore it through the eyes of the buyer, I can do it quickly, I'm back there. And the downside would just is you don't have that as much time to do that connection. So you decide, like honestly for me, it really just kind of depends on, if I've told them, hey, if I, like that lady yesterday, if he would have had to just really push it, just give me 15 minutes. 15 minutes, just come out and share a few things with you. In that case, I'm not letting them walk me through the house. I would just say, hey, thanks for letting me come in, you've done a great job, I recognize we've only got 15 minutes, is what we promised. So let me just walk through the house, see it through the eyes of the buyer, I'll be right back, and then we can talk, and then you can go walk through it. But if not, if it was, hey, yeah, you can come out and, you know, sit down and we can talk, and I was feeling like, okay, this doesn't have to be quick, then I may say, hey, yeah, why don't you show me through, you know, point out some of the upgrades, things you've done, and talk about what you're still planning to do, and let's go through the house. So does that make sense? So there's not a, I mean, it depends on, some agents will say, oh, you absolutely have to walk them through, and others will be like, no, you never have them go through, and you just decide. There's not a right or a wrong. So like I said, for me, it's just, if I feel like I've got a little bit more time and I need to have more of the connection stuff with them, then I'm gonna have them show me through. If I feel like, hey, I need to do this quick because they promised them I'd only take 15 minutes, then, well, which, by the way, let me stop on that. I have had times before where, especially like with that lady yesterday, where they're like, I'm just so busy, I just don't know if I have time. That I've just said, just give me 15 minutes. I promise you, I will, if I'm still there at 16 minutes, like, I give you permission to throw me out on my ear or something. And then when I've walked into the house, I've said, okay, I'll start my timer on my watch here, because I know I promised you it'd only be 15 minutes, so I'm gonna start a timer, boom. Okay, and then I'll walk through it, and then when timer beeps, I'll go, okay, Laura, thanks for letting me come out and meet with you, I appreciate it. And I promised I'd only take 15 minutes. What do you think they usually do?
Wait a minute.
Yeah,
You
they're
want
like,
you to stay.
yeah, no, you're fine, don't worry about it. I just wasn't sure that, you know, I didn't trust you, but now that 15 minutes later, I've built some rapport with them, then they feel, you're fine, just don't worry about it. Okay, but I wanna be clear, like, I told you I would leave, and I'm ready, I'll leave right now if you want me to leave. No, you're fine. So that's how I usually will approach that. If I have to say, look, I promise you, just give me 15 minutes. It'll be worth your time if you'll just give me 15 minutes. Once you get out there, you can, I've done that many times. Okay, I'm gonna start my stopwatch in 15 minutes, and then when it beeps, okay, thanks, I appreciate your time. I'll hope to hear from you later, and they usually say, no, well, I've got a few questions, so it's fine, you can stick around, okay? All right. So any questions so far on any of this? Okay. So then the second piece of this, so the first thing is the tap, think, acknowledge, and promise. The second piece of this is what I like to call the game plan. Now, let me ask you a question. If all of a sudden I said to you guys, oh, hey, perfect, it's here. There's a bus outside, come on, we're all getting on the bus, let's go. What would you guys do or say?
Like, why we're
Why
on the
are
bus?
we getting on a bus and where are we going and how are we
Okay,
gonna get off this bus?
Good. No,
Get off.
how can I get off? If I'm getting on, how do I get off? Good. So notice that. Everybody likes to know where we're going. Like if I just said, okay, come on guys, let's go get on a bus. You're like, whoa, hold on, where are we going? So think of this as that's what we're doing with the game plan. So with the game plan this is me telling the seller, okay, so I've acknowledged, promise, I've gone and looked at their property now, either with them or without, either way. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give them the game plan. So I wanna basically just say, so Trudy, you know, let me tell you what I wanna do, what I wanna accomplish in this time with you talking, okay? And then I'm gonna give them, here's the plan. Now, let me give to you guys what the plan is. First thing is needs, wants, expectations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to then, with them, I'm going to say, so Trudy, you know, I think, acknowledged, promised, I've gone through, I've looked at the property, so let me give you an overview, let me tell you what we're going to talk about. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to find out what your needs are, what your wants are, and ultimately what your expectations for me as an agent would be, and then I'll share with you what my expectations of you as a seller would be. So that's the first thing. So I'm gonna so remember, I'm just telling them during this game plan, when I first was learning this, it was confusing to me because I thought at that point we were doing it. I'm not doing that yet. Remember, I'm gonna have 4 points up here that I'm basically telling them, here's what we're going to do. So I'm not actually doing it yet. I'm just telling them. So for instance, it would be me saying to you guys, okay, at some point today, a bus is gonna pull up out there. When that bus pulls up, we're gonna go out, we're gonna get on the bus, we're gonna go drive to go look at a house, and then once, it's just 2 miles away, we'll look at the house, then we're gonna get back on the bus, and we'll come back here, and then we'll finish class. Like, that's what we're not getting on the bus yet, I'm just telling you what's gonna happen, right? So, that's what this is, I'm telling you. First thing we're gonna do is talk about your needs, wants, and ultimately your expectations, and I'll share with you what mine would be. Then second, we're gonna talk about, now on this one, you can call it a few different things. I could say, I'm gonna talk about marketing, or I usually say, I'm gonna talk about what we're gonna do to get your home sold. So you could call it marketing, you could call it separate yourself. But ultimately what I need to do is I need to get them to share with me what their needs, wants, and expectations are. Once they've shared with me their needs, wants, and expectations, then I'm gonna share with them what separates me from everyone else that's out there in the market. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna then say, here's what we're gonna do to get your home sold. But really what I'm doing is trying to separate myself. Okay? And then the third piece of this is then we're gonna talk about the market. Now, in terms of talking about the market, there's some pieces of that. So first we'll talk about the macro part of the market, meaning like just what's going on in the real estate market, so the macro piece. Then we'll talk about pricing. So we're going to talk about what's going on in the market in general. Then we're going to talk about how pricing will affect their property's price. And then we'll talk about the CMA. So basically, and I'm going to give you basically the language for explaining this whole thing in a second. But so in terms of when we're going to talk about the market, we're going to talk about just here's what's going on in the real estate market. Here's how pricing affects the price of your home, and then here's what your home would be worth. So we're going to talk about just the big picture, here's what's important on pricing, and then here's what we're going to do with your house, and then number 4. Is we're going to close. Now, so let me show you what that looks like. So I would say, okay, Trudy, so thanks for letting me come out, take a look at your home. Man, you've done a great job. You've really taken good care of this home. I promise you, I'm going to give you some good information, even if you decide that I'm not the right agent for you. But I'm sure you will decide that I am, because I'm that good. I'm just kidding. So, but let me tell you what we're going to do. So first thing I want to do is I'm going to ask you a number of questions, because I want to find out really ultimately what are your needs and what are your wants. But more important, what are your expectations from me? And then I'll share with you what my expectations of you as a seller would be. Once we've done that, then I'm going to then share with you, what do I do to get a home sold? Well, what makes me different than everybody else out there? So I'll share that with you. Once we've talked about that, and you're comfortable and confident in me, then we're going to go through and we'll talk about the market and what's going on in the market. We'll talk about pricing and how that affects your home. And then we'll also just ultimately talk about specifically what price we should list your home for. And then after that, if you're so this is the close now. So if you're comfortable and you're confident that I'm the right agent to help you get the home sold, then I'm going to ask you to sign some paperwork, okay?
Okay.
Great. Now, notice what have I just done? Yeah, I've set her up. So, not in a bad way, but I've set her up for me to close. It's kind of like what I was telling you yesterday of when we go out and look at homes, I'm going to ask you, do you want to write an offer on every single house we look at? So be prepared for that, because we're going out to find one for you to buy. The same is with this. So I'm gonna find out what you want, need, and expect. I'm gonna share with you what makes me different. We'll then talk about the market and price and all that kind of stuff. But then if you're comfortable and confident after that in me, I'm gonna ask you to sign paperwork, okay? Now, there's no surprise now when I ask them to sign paperwork, because I have told them. Now, what if they said, so I'm gonna ask you to sign paperwork. Oh, we're not signing any contracts tonight. What if they said that?
Give them some value.
Yeah, at this point, I'm just, hey, no worries, like I said, I would only ask you if you were comfortable and confident in me in getting the home sold for you. Okay? Yeah, that's fine, but we're not gonna sign tonight. Okay, that's fine. That's all I would say. Perfect. Let's go ahead. So then I'm gonna jump into doing this. So any questions on this? Okay, so once we've done that, now I'm gonna go to number 3 here. Oh, let me one other. Sometimes I will call this piece here, the separate yourself, the plan of action. So I'm gonna refer to that as that in a second. So, and you can think of this one as just being questions. Okay? So, now let's go to 3. So this is what I've told them we're gonna do. Now what I'm gonna do is we're gonna do this now. So we're gonna do this one right now. You follow me? Okay. So I flipped this over here, so I'm gonna go questions. Now, what I'm doing with the questions really is just what we worked on yesterday. So this is how this now fits in. Oh, there we go.
I can see.
Good, yeah, oh, that's the secret. I'm gonna start doing that. When I write on the board from now on, I'm gonna be like, here's my email address.
So funny.
Okay, that way you'll all move up, right? Okay, so think of it as this, that's this now. So when I'm gonna now do my questions, the questions that I'm going to use with them are going to be direct. I'm gonna just start with the directives, which if you remember from the directives are share with me, tell me about, help me understand, describe for me, all those things. So now, here's the difference. Now, remember yesterday when we talked about this with the buyer, and we talked about this little chart here that's the grid, right? The grid. So I would just do the same concept of that with this, is I would just say, okay. Now, remember, what we're wanting to find out is their needs, wants, and their expectations. So I would just say, so Trudy, describe for me what you're wanting to accomplish in getting your home sold. And then they're gonna start to tell me, and okay, what else? Yeah, sure, keep going. Makes sense. What else? Keep going. Now, what would you guess the difference with a seller in asking these questions versus what the buyer is gonna be? Any thoughts of that?
Like it'd probably be a lot less information, just I wanna get my home sold for the highest non-money.
Perfect, you got it, that's exactly right. With the buyer, when I said describe for me your ideal home, they usually go with the seller, hey, so describe for me what you wanna accomplish in getting your home sold. Well, I just wanna get it sold and I want the most amount of money and that's it. So, think of it this way, the filling the grid piece of it, you're just gonna have to ask more of these, more directives. So to help you with that, if you will turn in your book to page 85. On page 85 is 22 questions for the listing presentation. Now, you may or may not want to use all 21 of these 22 questions. If you turn the page, you'll see there's only 21. I don't know why that is. 22 questions for the listing presentation, and we have 21.
Keep them wondering.
Yeah, I guess the idea is you come up with your number 22, I guess. So, but I'll give you some ideas of some other ones that you could potentially use on here. So for me, well, and I think actually this one is in here, but share with me your past experience. So share with me your, number 15. Well, no, that's not it. That's kind of along the lines, but I like to just ask them, tell me about your past experience. So remember, we just want to start it with one of these. So Trudy, tell me about your past experience that you've had buying or selling homes. And then they're gonna, well, I mean, it's 15 years ago. Yeah, okay, I can understand, but tell me about what you liked or what you didn't like. So I'm just gonna dive in and ask a bunch of questions. Now, think of it this way. Here's probably the best way to help you understand what we're doing with this is if you were going to be given a test. So if I had said to you guys, all right, we're gonna take a test now on everything that I've taught you so far this week. Would you rather have a open book test or a closed book test for that?
Okay.
Why?
Because you can refer to your notes.
That's right. So think of this as the same thing. So think of this back here is, right here is the test. We're gonna take a test right here in the marketing, what separates yourself, this plan of action is the test. And if you want it to be an open book test, the way you do that is right here. If you will ask the right questions here of the seller, they will give you all the answers that you need to pass the test. Are you following what I mean? Meaning that once I get here, well, because remember back here I said, if you're comfortable and confident with everything I have to say, I'm going to ask you to sign a contract. Well, so I'm going to ask them to sign a contract. The way I'm going to get them to be comfortable and confident in me is essentially to get them to tell me what they're looking for. Now, let me, two things I want to share with you on that. First one is, I don't know, I can't remember what book it was now. Yeah, you're not going to be able to write it down because I don't remember. If it comes to me, I'll share it with you, but I was reading a book, and in this book, the guy was talking about how he had gone on this presentation, and he had gone out there and was meeting with like this board of directors to present to them what they wanted. And he said, as he got there, like on the way to the presentation, he like noticed, I'm losing my voice. And by the time he got to the presentation, so he's going to meet with this board of directors to make a presentation to sell to them. And he shows up to the presentation and he's like, I'm sorry. Like he can't talk at all. And so he just apologizes that I'm not going to be able to make the presentation, I can't talk. And the president of the company said, oh, well here, I'll just do your presentation for you. And he said, here's what we need. And then the president just outlined for them, this is what we are looking for. And the guy said, had I given my presentation, I would never have gotten the deal because it was way off base for what they wanted. But because the president said, let me just outline, let me do your presentation for you, this is what we need you to do. And then he laid it all out. And at the end, he said, can your company do that? And he goes, uh-huh. I mean, he shook his head. And he goes, great, you got the deal. Now, so that's kind of what we're trying to do. Keep in mind, the biggest problem that we generally have when we go on a presentation is we go in and verbally vomit on them. And just keep talking. And we talk about all this stuff that they don't even know, we don't even know if they care about. In fact, actually, let me give you, I want to give you an example of this. So, years ago, this is probably 10 years ago, maybe even more, but I'm sitting in, we had gone, the company I was with, we were doing a like management retreat thing, where we had gone up to Park City. We were up in the Park City area in Utah, and so we'd kind of gone and stayed at this resort to get away from like, so that everybody's away from their offices and all that kind of stuff. Well, the president of the company, I don't know if he asked or if this manager just said, I want to show the other managers in the company how to do a listing presentation. And so the president said, okay, yeah, great, you can take some time to do that. So at this meeting, now picture this, you've got like this boardroom, kind of it wasn't really a boardroom. Picture that you take these tables and we put them into like a rectangle. So we've got the tables like a long one this way, and then, you know, two tables this way, and then 4 that way, whatever. So we're sitting like that. So this is what he does. And this is no lie. He says to them, guys, this is how I teach my agents to do a listing presentation. So keep in mind, as we talk about doing it this way, what I'm about to show you, I promise you there are agents in your market doing what I'm about to show to you. But this is what he did. He said, this is how I teach my agents to do it. He pulled out a binder like this that had probably this many pages worth of things in there. And have you guys looked at all on 21 Online, the Toolkit CMA? Have you guys looked at that at all? Oh, you should, because there's some good stuff on there. Now, I would never use all of it, but basically what he did is, it wasn't Toolkit CMA, but he had basically the same type of a thing that he printed out, had it in a binder like this. And then he stood the binder up and he went like this. This is how you do a listing presentation, guys. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, thank you for letting me come out and talk to you. And I'm with Century 21 and we are a member of the Cardis Relocation Network. As part of that, that's the largest relocation network in the company. And how excited are you guys already? I can see Teresa's like, she's got drool coming out of her mouth. Like, could you imagine? I mean, for real. Like, I am not kidding, for an hour. Imagine if for the next hour I sat here and went, let me tell you about the tools we have, guys. So, Century 21 is 100,000 agents across 80-something countries, and you know, we're just the best that there is, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, come on in. This is the best part of the presentation, Emilio. So, I'm showing them what not to do, actually. So it's bad timing to come in. You're good. So, but could you imagine what would it be like if that's what if you were, imagine you are selling your house and you're sitting there, and somebody showed up and did that? Not for real. What would you do?
I would want him to leave.
Yeah. Why?
Cut to the chase. You're killing me.
It's wasting time.
Yeah, but I promise you, there are people going and doing that right now. Versus, meaning, there could be some good stuff in that, but most of it they could care less about. So if they could care less, why talk about it? So instead, what we want to do is think of it this way. Think of this like Jeopardy. Meaning, any of you guys watched Jeopardy? Have you seen it before? What's the object of the game?
To know the answers.
To win.
To win.
Is it to know the answers?
Well,
Yeah.
Because do they give the answer, or what do they give? They have to, yeah, they're given the answer, they have to come up with the question. So think of it this way. What your job is to do is, the answers are all there. You have to come up with the questions that will reveal the answers to the test. Does that make sense? See, if you will ask them the right questions during this, using these directives. Hey, so tell me about what you want to accomplish. Now let's go back to this on the page, whatever it was I said, 81? No, 85. If you look at that, so let's look at some of these. Share with me what's most important to you about selling the home. Let's see. what is the time frame which you'd like the home sold and why is it important to you? Can you see what, like, if you ask these type of questions, what do you like most about your property? Some of the other things that I like to ask that if you wanna write down is, what's your, oh, actually, it is, 20. No, it's not.
Is it 22?
Yeah, that one was good too, actually. I keep seeing like versions of it. So one of the things that I like to just ask is, what's your biggest concern in getting your home sold? Like, what scares you the most about this process? And they're gonna tell you. How would you know if you're having a good experience? That was one of the ones that was on here. Number 15, how would you know you're having a positive experience selling the property? So I'm just asking, hey, share with me, what would it look like for you to have a, what would be the perfect experience for you? What would it look like? And then what are they gonna tell me?
Sell my home as fast as possible for the most money.
Yeah, but in essence, they're gonna give me the answers they're looking for. Now, so here was the second. So the first was like, seriously, that manager sat there for an hour flipping through the pages, telling us, and I was like, give me something to, like, somebody shoot me, something, like, put me out of the, because I was just like, so, like, you've gotta be kidding me, like, and of course, like, the president of the company was like, that was really good, yeah, guys, you gotta train your agents to do that, and I'm like, no, don't train your agents to do that, like, that's the worst thing you could do, because you guys get it. I mean, imagine that if you'd have come to class on Monday, all right, guys, turn in your books to page 1. Or actually, let's see, what would it have been? I'd have been like, all right, turn to your page in your books to page 8. All right. The foundation for the company is purpose, desire.
That's funny.
I mean, could you imagine?
Yeah, we can read too.
Yeah, exactly. I know, exactly. Thank you. I know, it's like, then after that, once you have your purpose and your desire, then you gotta have some goals, plans, and a schedule.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So how do you feel about agents that put together like books on themselves and what they've done and, like these bio books? I've seen different agents have those.
Yep.
Do you put those together on yourself?
Personally, no, but I'm fine with it if you do. If you do it, it's great. Just don't sit down and try to go through it with them. Do it as a pre-listing package. Hey, I'm gonna drop some stuff off that'll let you know a little bit about who I am as an agent. I'm great with that. Like, to having that kind of a thing. But thank you for bringing that up, because I probably wouldn't have said this, but most agents, their listing presentation, and there are some doing what I just said. The ones that aren't doing that are doing this. So Trudy, let me tell you about me. I am the top agent in my cubicle. There is no one in my cubicle that does a better job than I do. Like, I'm the top. I get awards from myself all the time. Like, I make them sitting there. I mean, I'm joking, but I'm not kidding though. Usually what happens is people are out there like, I'm the top agent, here's the awards that I got. I got this award last year, and I got this award the year before, and like, that is their listing presentations. Let me tell you how wonderful I am. Like, for real, that is. So when you say that, that is true. There are a lot of agents. I'm great with having all of, here's who I am and here's the recognition and stuff, but do it as a pre-listing package of like, I'm gonna drop off some stuff before our appointment so that you can see a little bit about me. Then if they wanna read it, they can read it. If they don't, they don't. But as soon as I walk in the door, I wanna make this whole presentation about them. It's about you. And it's about helping you get what you want. It's about me sitting down and just saying, okay, so tell me what you want to accomplish. What's your biggest concern? Now, let me give you the best example that I have of this. And this was so long ago now that I don't, and it was before I was coming to California, but, so I don't remember where this was at, but it was in California. So, and this was the guy that trained me, and this was the one that shared this with me. So there was an opportunity to get a listing that was like, in today's market, probably would be $80 million or $50 million, something like that. So it was this property that was coming on the market, that it was, I don't remember what he did, but well-to-do person, he had died, his wife now was in the house, but she's gonna sell it. So every agent in the market wanted this listing, because they knew he had died, that she was probably gonna sell it. So she sets up a listing of presentations or appointments with 5 different agents. So 4 of the agents go out and talk to her, the 5th one shows up. Now the 5th one shows up and does this. Hey, tell me what you want to accomplish, help me understand, share with me what you're, so, and the reason I like using this one as like the last question of these directives in filling the grid is, so what's your greatest concern or your biggest fear in getting your home sold? What is it that has you most, nervous or something like that? Does that make sense? So what happens is this agent sits down and he takes her through this, and he gets to there and he says, hey, so share with me, like, what's your biggest concern on getting this home sold? Now remember, this is a like upper end home. And she says, well, I've met with 4 other agents. All 4 of the agents that I've met with prior to you came in, told me how great they were. They told me that they were gonna put it on their office tour. They were gonna put it on the board tour. They were gonna have all these people coming through and looking at my house. And she said, that carpet that's in the other room, that's all white, that was a birthday present from my husband. Handmade carpet from Peru, like he spent $100,000 just on the carpet. And for that one room. And she said, and it's white. Like, the whole time everybody's telling me this, all I can picture in my head is my birthday present carpet being destroyed because of all these people walking through it. She said, I don't want tons of people walking through the house. Like, that's not what I'm trying to get. And she said, so, like, she said, I recognize, like, I'm leaving and it would be somebody else's house, but, like, that's a present that I don't want to see destroyed while I live here. So he says, the agent, now, so remember, once we've done all these questions, then we're going to go to number 4, which is our plan of action here. So what happens though, is he says, okay, look, so when he gets to there, he says, okay, well look, I can totally understand where you're coming from on that. Let me tell you what, we're not going to do that. I'm not gonna put it on the office tour, I'm not gonna put it on a board tour, in fact, I'm only gonna let people come through the house if they are fully qualified to buy it. Like, if they can't afford to buy it, we're not even letting them in. And she's like, okay. And he said, but I want to even go one step further than that. Like, I don't want anybody walking on that carpet with their bare shoes on. So I'm gonna go down and buy some booties, and I'm gonna have them by the front door, and anybody that comes in, we're gonna have those booties for them put on. Okay, now, and if I want to remember right, I want to say it was like a $15 million house. This is probably close to 20 years ago. Guess who got the listing?
He did.
Yeah, why do you think he got the listing?
He knew how to sell himself because he asked all the right questions.
That's right. See, that's the point I'm trying to get to you guys with this, is if you will ask the right questions, they'll give you the answers. And so he got this $15 million listing over buying a box of booties. I'll go buy a box of booties so that when people come through, they're not destroying your carpet. Because that's what her biggest concern was. See, so when you can find out what they want, what are they interested in, what matters to them, see, that's where I was saying, they'll give you all the answers to the test. See, he got the answer to the test. Everybody else went in and talked about how great they were. Oh, we're going to bring all these people through. We're going to get so many people through. We'll get this thing sold because of all these people coming through. And she's inside going, I don't want all these people coming through. Like, that scares me. So if you will find out from them, they'll tell you. Clearly you can see when you have that type of a relationship with the person, that connection, you can create the value of, oh, well look, let's not have everybody come through the house then. This is what we'll do to get the home sold. See, if you'll ask the questions, they'll give you the answers. See, so now here's where this becomes a little bit of a challenge though, in terms of me training it. Not a challenge for you doing it, but me training it to you, is I can give you, like, here's the list of questions to ask. Now, and here's what I will say, that for page 85 there, these 21 questions are not like the end-all be-all. Like, you might think of some additional ones and do it. Like, for me, like one of the other ones, and I don't know that it's in here, is how is price gonna affect your decision? I just wanna know, how is price gonna affect your decision? Now, what could they interpret that to mean when I say that? Because it could mean one of two things.
That, are you willing to negotiate?
Okay, good, I'm good, yeah. Negotiate what?
Price
Which one, which price?
of the home.
Yes, good. Or, what would be the other one? The commissions. So when I say how is price gonna affect your decision, that's neutral enough that if they're worried about commission, they'll talk about how price of commission is gonna affect their decision. If they're not, they'll talk about how the price of their house was gonna affect their decision. Does that make sense? So I kind of throw out this neutral, like, so, hey, how is price gonna affect your decision? And then they're gonna tell you, either, oh, well, I'm not giving it away, is what they'll usually say. And then you can say, well, the good news is, in all my years of selling, 22 years for me, I've never given one away yet. So you're not gonna be the first. So you don't have to worry about that. So, but you just asking that type of question. So I love asking, tell me about your past experience. I do like the one that you were saying on here of ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish in getting your home sold? Like, that's a great one to start with right here. That's like a very, very, very good first question. Hey, so ultimately, share with me, what are you trying to accomplish in getting your home sold? What's our objective? What are you most worried about? What's your biggest concern? How would you know if you're having, that one's a great one, is how are you gonna know if you're having a really positive experience? What would just like and I've even used to say to them, look, I wanna be the agent that when this transaction is over, like, you're going and taking out an ad in the newspaper telling everybody how awesome I was. Like, what would have to happen for you to do that? What would it have to look like? Are you following me what I'm asking? Like, ultimately, I'm just saying, like, what would knock your socks off service look like to you? What would be your biggest concern? Now, the other questions I'll ask during this is, because let's say that they're sold on, let's go back to your scenario, they want to list it for $750, but it's worth $550. Okay, so, hey, help me understand, how important is it the timing of getting this home sold? Oh, it's really important. Well, but what's more important, the timing or the price? Oh, the price. Okay, well, so what would your feelings be if we had it on the market for a few months and at $750 and it hasn't sold? What's your feelings gonna be on that? How's that gonna affect what's going on? Like, you just gotta ask all these questions. Like, think of it as you're the doctor. Like, if you walked into the doctor and you said, I've got a headache, what do they start doing?
Ask a question.
That's a question.
Yeah, in fact, so I mentioned to you guys that my son just got married. His wife is in medical school right now. She's in halfway through her medical school. And I was talking to her and she was telling me that part of what they've trained the doctors in is to sit down and ask questions. And then they have like a whole list, which I actually have, if you want to see it, I had her give it to me, but a whole list of questions that and actually, interestingly, part of where they start out with in teaching doctors is to come in and get some connection or some rapport of, I mean, not to the extent of sit down and have coffee with them, but like to find out a little bit, to connect with them as they walk in. But then they're gonna start, like if you go in, I got this headache that it won't go away, like the doctor's gonna come in and sit down and start asking questions to figure out that you got a nail in your head. So you gotta tie it all together. All right. Does that make sense? You following me on the questions?
Yes.
Any questions on the questions? Do you understand what we're doing? Like, if you will do it this way, the people are not then bored because you're going page by page in your book of, let me tell you, we put your property on over 800 websites, so you don't have to worry about people seeing your home. Blah, blah, blah. So like, you can just ask, you're going to ask them to share with you. Now, the last thing that I told you I was going to tell you is, and I sort of told you this already, but when I first went and was learning this probing stuff that we've been talking about yesterday here, when I first went and learned that, I told you there was a loan officer in there. And what he did with me was he sat down, so for this part of this thing, he said, he sat down with me and said, Russ, describe for me the ideal loan officer. So Liz, how long do you have your license? No, sorry, right as she took a bite of a banana. So
13
I'll
years.
stall for you.
13 years.
Okay, good. So let's assume for a minute that I'm a loan officer. And if I said to you, hey, Liz, describe for me the ideal loan officer, what would you say?
Someone that I have a good rapport with, trust,
Okay.
good communication, always available,
Okay.
good with my, clients, good reputation with clients.
Sure. What else? So tell me about some of bad experiences you've had with loan officers.
They promise the world and they don't deliver.
Okay, sure.
Horrible communication with clients.
Can you see what, if I was a loan officer, how I would use this process? Now, if I said, okay, well, tell me about the good experiences you've had with loan officers. What are the best, what did they do that was awesome?
We get the job closed.
Yeah, awesome, good. So, but no, notice. Now, so what happened with me was I had, as when I'm learning this loan officer sat down and took me through that, but really went through it and drove into this. And I think I told you this, but when he was done, I said, hey, if you were a loan officer in Utah, I'd give you all my business. Because I felt like this guy knows how to do loans. Now, from what you learned yesterday, how much did he as the loan officer say during this process?
Not much.
Yeah, like did he tell me this is what I do? No. All he did was listen to me say, because very similar, that's why I asked how long you've been in the business, because I had been in the business a few years, and at that point I was like, oh yeah, let me tell you. Like, and I did exactly what you, like, tell me the truth. When I call and ask what's going on with this loan, I don't want to be told, oh, everything's fine, if then in 2 days you're going to call me and go, hey, we got a problem.
Yeah,
If
we
there's
need
a
more
problem,
conditions or something.
what?
We need more
Yeah.
conditions, or they.
If there,
Yeah.
if there's a problem, I want to know there's a problem. Like, if it's iffy at all, you tell me, hey, I'm working on it, I'm not sure. Like, I don't want to hear it's good until it's good. Like I just sat and like that. And at the end, he was like, okay, yeah, sure, yeah, no, that makes sense, okay, sure. And then at the end, I was like, man, I wish you were a loan officer in Utah. I'd give you all my loans. Because I felt like this guy knows how, and I remember thinking, this guy knows how to do a loan. But what's the truth? Like, I have no idea if he did or not.
Well, that's why it's nice though, because like once you meet a good loan officer, you kind of have a rapport and then you could always deal with that person.
Yeah, well, but the key thing was I now felt like this guy understands me. He knows how to do a loan for me now because he listened to me. Same thing will happen with your sellers with this. Now remember I told you the story about the agent that went out there, his very first one, Tony, and at the end they said, how long have you been doing this? After they had signed everything, and he was like, yeah, believe it or not, this was my first one. And they're like, yeah, right, whatever. This is not your first listing. He's like, no, really, this is the very first time I've ever been out and done this. And they're like, yeah, whatever. But can you see why they would say that now? If you sit down and ask some good questions of, hey, so share with me, what are you trying to ultimately want to accomplish? So tell me about your past experience. What did you like? What did you not like? Give me an example of a time that you had really good customer service. What did that look like? You know, what would have to happen? What would I have to do to have you like want to go take out an ad in the newspaper to tell people how great I was? Like, what would that look like? What would I have to do? They'll tell you all the answers. And then the good news is now. So now we'll transition to this plan of action. So Tucker.
How do you know when when they've done the questions, how much do you think you have enough information, or they stop talking, but not all?
Oh, great, yes, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, so on this, basically just think of it as, and it's totally fine if you wanted to have, like, make copies of this or create your own in a Word document, have a bunch of questions, bring it with you, and then I would sit down and go, so Lori, hey, I want to thank, acknowledge, promise, let me take a look at the house. Hey, here's what it's going to look like. First, I'm going to ask you a number of questions. I want to find out your needs, wants, and expectations. Then after that, I'll share with you what I do to get a home sold. We're going to talk about the market and how that affects getting your home sold. And then if you're comfortable and confident, I'm going to ask you to sign a contract, okay? Okay, perfect. Now, in preparing for our meeting, I wrote down a number of questions that I wanted to ask you. In fact, I actually had one that when I sat down and went through that, the seller said, well, I've written down a bunch of questions that I wanna ask you, and actually I had written down a bunch too, but I wasn't going to say, I've written them down, I just had them there in case I needed to glance at them. But because she said to me, I've written down a number of questions that I wanted to ask you, and I said, all right, great, go, we can do this in 1 of 2 ways. Either you can ask your questions, and then I'll ask mine, or vice versa, whatever you wanna do. Well, I've got some questions. Okay, go ahead. And so then she asked her questions. Now, remember, if she asked anything about price, I'm gonna say, you know what, we'll get to that, but I first need to find out a few things from you. So I'll promise we'll get to that once I get some more information, okay? But so she went through and asked this question, that question, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of the questions she asked me, I really didn't answer right then. So like I let her ask her questions because she's like, I got a number of questions. Great, why don't you go ahead and ask your questions? But every time she asked a question that I didn't want to deal with right then, which was most of them, I said, oh, perfect, yeah, nope, I already had planned to talk about that. So let me just make a note so I don't forget. Perfect, yeah, what was your next question? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, perfect, yep, nope, I was gonna cover that too, but I'll just make sure. Oh, yeah, I'll make sure to cover that. Yep, nope, I'm gonna plan to answer that question for you. Okay, great, now let me ask you some questions. So, share with me. Have you ultimately decided to sell your home, and what are you trying to accomplish? And then she started talking, and then I just asked question. And I did say to her, now here's the funny thing. One of the last questions that I asked her before, so to answer your question, just kind of when it makes sense that you've got whatever question you've written down asked, that you feel like you've got what you need, then it's time. So, but here's what I did. At the very end, I said, I didn't say it the way I've said it to you guys, I said it a little different, but I said to her, look, my objective in this with you is, like, I want an advocate. When we're done with this transaction, I want you walking around, and anybody you ever hear say anything about real estate, that you're like, oh my gosh, you have to call Russ. And here was the cool thing. Here's where I knew I had her, is she said, oh, well, and in fact, actually, let me pause. She actually worked at a bank, and she was in charge of all of their foreclosures. And so I said to her, like, when we're done with this transaction, not only do I want you running around telling everybody else, when you have a foreclosure at your bank, I want you calling me saying, yeah, we need you to come help us sell this foreclosure. So I said, so what would it need to look like? What would I need to do for that to have that happen? And she goes, oh, if I had some foreclosures, I'd list them with you right now. Now, so that, I knew at that point, I've already got the listing now. Like, she just told me I'm getting the listing. Does that make sense? So to answer your question, like, you'll know. If you just have a list of questions and just say, hey, I've got these questions I'm gonna go through with you. But at the end of the day is just getting them talking enough that you feel like, okay, I know what they are looking for in an agent. And most of the time, honestly, it's just they need to talk. They just need to share it with you. Once they've shared, is that shared right?
Share.
It just doesn't sound right. Once they've shared it with you, I guess. Once they've shared it with you, you probably got the listing at that point anyway. Because you're gonna stand out. This is how we're separating ourselves. Anybody else, if they've talked to other people, are not gonna be doing this, I promise you. They're not. And so because of that, you're gonna stand out as like, you know what you're doing. So, but now let's go into this. So let's say, so you guys give me some examples. So what kinds of things do you think, which I'm hesitant to ask this question because I want you to answer this question like a seller, not like an agent. Because here's what I'll tell you, is the way that you think they're gonna respond as an agent is not the way they respond in reality as a seller. But that's okay. So think like a seller as best as you can. What do you think would be the type of things during this questions when I ask them, what are your concerns? What is it you're most worried about? How would you know if you're having good service? What would that look? What kinds of things do you think they would talk about?
Things they expect you to do.
Like, so yeah, like give me an example. Like what? That's where I want you to go, but I want examples, specifics.
Call me before you bring somebody.
Okay, so I'm gonna just call that communication. Perfect. And that there's more to it than just that in communication, but we'll talk about. So part of what I'm trying to show you guys here, what I want you thinking is what kinds of things would people be worried and concerned about in selling their home? But think like a seller, not like an agent. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a minute, but
Expectations?
like what? Give me,
Okay. Well, like, you know, if the agent's gonna say they're gonna do all this, the seller's gonna want to make sure that's gonna happen.
okay, so, okay, good. Yeah, I'll write it down as expectation, that works.
Then I'm gonna get the attention that my property deserves.
And
You'll return my phone calls, you'll,
Right.
like, I won't fall through the holes.
gotcha. Perfect. What else?
Are you gonna, is the listing agent, the seller, are you gonna be doing all my open houses, or are you gonna have someone else do my open houses? That gets asked a lot.
That you do get asked that a lot? Okay, I was gonna just say, do you get asked that? Cause,
Yeah.
okay.
Kind of the same.
Now, let me pause for that one real quick. So on that, if that came up here, I would say, so I would just ask, so, is it important to you that I'm the one that does the open houses? Like, that I would wanna find out more detail, like, so I would, this is where I would start to get into some of the modifiers on that, to find out more detail of, you know, why they feel like it needs, what's their reasoning behind wanting you to do it?
Well, I think because they're
Trust.
but also they're paying me the commission, so they just want me at the house.
Gotcha, okay.
And which is really not always feasible because you have other properties, but, you know, you can, and they don't want open houses every weekend, but, you know, I tell them I will try to do all of them, but I do have other clients,
Yeah, perfect.
you know.
Yeah, and that's, I think that's a good way of saying it is, you know, I'll be happy to do them as often as I can, but how would you feel about us doing extra ones, even if I'm not the one that's here, I had somebody else do it so we had them doing it in addition to me. How would you feel about that? If they say, nope, I want it to be you, okay, now I've got a decision to make, do I wanna do that? And here's the other thing. For 7 or 8%, I'll do that.
And most of the time after the
Right.
1 or 2 open houses, they're like, oh, we don't wanna leave the house again,
Exactly, yeah,
so.
exactly. Okay, what other,
Keep it clean.
what other
you know.
things would you think they would be worried about? Honestly, I think we've probably pretty much landed on it, really, the true things that they really worry about. Now, what are some things we think they worry about that they really don't worry about? Well, I'll give you the one I was thinking of, because I was expecting you guys to say this. Most of the time, they don't care about what marketing you do. Meaning, they care, but they don't care. Like, meaning, like, for example, I brought up we put your house on 800 websites. Like, most of them probably don't really care. Meaning, like, they wanna know it's on the internet. They care about that, but, I guess what I'm trying to say is, most of the trainings that you would go to on listing presentation are gonna be all about, here's all the marketing that Century 21 does. Look at all this marketing that we do. Look at all this stuff that we do. My experience is, it really boils down to this. Do they trust you? If they trust you, they trust that you know what to do in terms of marketing and all that kind of stuff. So really, this is so my experience is this, that these things, so let me show you. So since we came up with those, let me show you, I'm gonna add 2 other things to this that I'll talk about. That I'll use to separate myself. Okay, but so communication. So if they were worried about communication and being communicated with, so which really to some extent, the attention to detail kind of falls into that, but not exactly. But let's say that they have said, do you need a break?
No.
You guys want a break?
I need to go to the bathroom.
All right, let's take a break, actually. This is a good spot, and then we'll come back and do it. So it's 10:20, so 10:35. All right, let's get going then. So, all right, so where we're at in this process is, let me just kind of review to make sure everybody's up to speed. Is you're gonna tap, think, acknowledge, promise, we give them the game plan, here's what we're gonna do. And we're jumping, we've asked now the questions, they've given us basically the answers to all the tests. Now what we're gonna do is take what they've said they were concerned about and tell them how we're gonna take care of it. So, meaning like, I may have even asked them up here when they brought up communication, I may have said, well, so how often do you wanna be communicated with? What manners do you wanna be communicated with? You know, does that make sense? So that they're telling me, oh, yeah, if you just called me once a week or whatever. But let me give you a horror story on that. So I had one time that I went out and did this, sat down with the client, and this guy, I was helping him, so I was listing 2 of his investment properties. And he said, look, I have done this many, many times. I understand how it works. Don't call me until you get an offer. And I said, okay. So I listed both these houses. They were both $500,000 houses in Utah. And so I list both of these houses. They were both actually overpriced, by the way, and I knew that they were. But he had said to me, don't call me until you get an offer. And I was like, okay. So I put it on the market and nothing happened. We had some showings, but nothing happened, nothing. Like 3 months went by and I never called him once because he told me not to. And I got a call one day. I want my listings back, you're horrible. Like, why have you not stayed in contact with me? And I said, well, you told me not to call you until I got an offer. And he said, well, yeah, but we're clearly overpriced. And why didn't you call me and say we need to do a price reduction? And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess. So, like, I kind of, when I was out there and he said to me, now I was still fairly new in the business, but I was like, when he said to me, I know how this works, I know what to do, like, I interpret it as like, he knows better than me, so I'm not gonna say anything. So part of what I would say is like, establish with them, what I learned from that is establish with them when you are going to. Now here's the other thing that I learned from that. Now, you may or may not wanna do this, but after that experience, for me, here's what I decided to do from then on going forward. When I would go out and list a property, I would tell the person, and again, believe me, if you hear me say this and you're like, I don't wanna do it, I'm fine with that, like, honestly. I'm not saying you have to do this. I just found for me it worked really well, so this is what I did. Was what I told them, because of him saying, like, don't call me until you get an offer, after that I started saying to people, I want to sit down with you face to face, just for a quick review of what's gone on once a month on this listing. Every month that goes by that you're listing that this home is not sold, I want to sit down in a face to face meeting and we're going to talk about what's gone on, what that means, and what we should do. And because had I done that with him, if I'd have said, perfect, but I'd like to sit down with you again in a month and let's review if they're not sold and what we're gonna do, I guarantee you he would have said, perfect, yeah, we'll reduce the price and that's what we'll do. Okay, great. So for me, under this communication, like, just figure out what you're gonna do. Then for here, what I wanna do is I wanna just then, during this plan of action, I've asked them all these questions up here. Then now down here, I'm gonna say, so Trudy, you mentioned communication and how you wanted to make sure you were communicated with. So, and when we talked about that, you said once a week. So here's what I do. I call my sellers every Friday between 10 and noon. What's the best number to call you on this Friday between 10 and noon?
And I give you my cell phone.
So now notice what I just did too. What did I just say? I call all I'm kind of closing on her right here too.
Right.
Like, I call my sellers every Friday, what time do you want me to call you this Friday? I'm kind of telling her, we're gonna list your house. So I will do that every Friday. Now, let's say that up here, when I was asking questions, they had said something about, I sold a whole house once before and the agent listed it and then I never heard from him again. Okay, well, so like if they were concerned about that with me, then I would just deal with it here and figuring out what they expect, and let's put together a plan. This is what I'm gonna do. Does that make sense? Okay. So on communication, I'm just gonna, basically they've told me what they expect me to do. Now I'm just gonna tell them what they already told me they expect. Does that make sense? That's kind of how you're getting the answers up here. Then I'm gonna come down here and tell them the answers they already told me. This is what you said you wanted, so this is what I'm gonna do. Now, let me tie this together for you to make sure you're clear. This is part of the reason we don't talk about price. We still haven't talked about price, and I'm not gonna talk about price till they've done this. I'm now starting to separate myself here, is what I'm doing, by doing everything we're gonna do now. Now, and I'll show you what that looks like. Meaning, I may say up here, you know, most agents, it's pretty normal for them to list a home and maybe call you, maybe not. Not me. The way I'm different is I'm gonna call you every week, but not only that, I wanna come and sit back down with you in a face-to-face meeting. You mentioned, Trudy, that you had listed once before and then you never heard from the agent again. Before I leave tonight, we're gonna set the next appointment for when I'm coming back to sit down to review what's gone on while we've had your home listed. Sound good?
Yes,
Now, what did I just do again?
close.
I'm closing again on her, letting her know we're listing it, and I'm gonna set an appointment tonight when I leave to come back to sit down and review, here's what's gone on and here's what we need to do to get your home sold. How do you feel about that in terms of the communication?
Sounds great.
Is there anything else that we haven't talked about you would want me to do in terms of communication? Can you see, like, I wanna make sure she's clear and she's happy with the communication. The other thing you mentioned was expectations of, what was that one? I don't remember. What was said about that I wrote it down?
How they expect you to handle the sale.
Oh, yeah, okay. So yeah, just in terms of what you're expecting me to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you mentioned that you expected me to make sure to call you every week to give you an update, and here's what I'm gonna do. So here's how I would do it. Most agents will do that. They'll call and just tell you what's gone on, but not me. One of the tools that we have, just so you guys know you have this tool, one of the tools that we have is called Golden Ruler, that not only am I gonna call you, but every Wednesday, I'm gonna have an email sent to you that shows you the online marketing and how many people are looking at your property. So in terms of that, you can count on that for me, and then we'll talk about it every Friday when I call if you have any questions about any of those things. Okay? And then as far as that goes too, and under these expectations, is you're gonna hear from my assistant, and she's gonna let you know that you can always contact her if you have any questions as well. Because I'm gonna be busy out trying to get your home sold, and so if you have questions, you'll probably end up talking to her a little bit. Sound good? Which, when I'm saying that, that's just the transaction coordinator. It's not like
Right.
my assistant, it's transaction coordinator, okay? So, as far as the attention to detail, that's what I'd bring up. I have a transaction coordinator who's gonna oversee this whole thing, and so, as I said, you can call and talk to them. Most agents don't do that. Most agents, you're relying on them, and, are they off of their other job yet? Or are they still working their other job? But not me, this is my full-time job. See, I'm separating myself there. Okay. Let's see, so who will do open houses? We kinda already talked about that, up to where I would just say, like, are you expecting me to do the open houses? And how would you feel about if we did some extra open houses? Like, I'll do the ones that I can, but if I can't do one, would you rather do one or not do one? Well, we'd rather do one than not. Okay, great. So you're okay if I do occasionally have a different, one of the agents in the office do it? Yes, perfect. So that's how I'm gonna deal with that. Now, let's talk about pictures here. In terms of, this is one of the other ways that I separate myself. So I would say, so Trudy, where was it you said you were moving to?
South Orange County.
To South Orange County. Okay, good, excellent, that's exciting. So, have you looked at any houses down there online yet?
I have.
Have you noticed anything when you're looking at pictures of houses?
They always look bigger than they actually are.
But what about the quality of the pictures? Have you noticed anything?
Most of them are pretty good, but you get the odd one that you think, who took that picture?
Right, yeah, in fact, I saw one, this is no lie, I saw one the other day that, it was so dark, you couldn't tell anything. Like, the pictures were so dark, you seriously could not even tell what room it was in the house. It was that dark. I was like, you gotta be kidding. So, like, that's the type of story I would tell to this person. It's like, so for me, with me, I hire a professional photographer to come out and take your pictures. So I'm gonna have a professional coming out, now make sure you're doing that, but I'm gonna have a professional come out and take the pictures so exactly what you said. It's probably gonna look bigger than it really is, meaning we're gonna make it look in its very best light possible. Because I'm gonna have a professional. Most agents don't do that. They pull out their cell phone and take pictures. And like you said, the cameras on phones are pretty good today, but the downside is most of them don't have like a wide angle lens, so they can't really get much of the room. They don't look that good. So just like when you've been on there, when you list your house with me, now notice what I'm doing. When we list your house tonight, I'm gonna hire a professional to come out and take pictures for you, okay? So most agents don't do that. The other thing, you had talked about, you were worried about your pets and all those kinds of things with people showing the home. Well, one of the things that I do is I use a lockbox. So I put KB, in Utah we call it a key box, but it's a lockbox. They're the same company, we all use the same thing, but I'm gonna put a lockbox on your home. Now, let me tell you how my lockbox is different. Now, see, part of what you wanna do with this, remember what we're trying to accomplish here? Separate yourself. So everything you talk about, you gotta talk about, here's what most agents do, here's how I do it. So I'm gonna say, so there are some agents out there that when they list your home, they actually just put a contractor's box on there. Can you believe that? Like, meaning like when an agent's showing the home, they plug in the code, a 4-digit code, the buyer could be looking over their shoulder and then now they have access to your house because later tonight they know the code. But that's not how I do it. I use a lockbox, and the lockbox that I use actually, now how mine is gonna be different than that is my lockbox actually, if somebody opens it, it will notify me within a few minutes that somebody's opened the lockbox. So I'm always gonna know that somebody's opened. The other thing that mine's gonna do, now, truth is, anybody using the board lockboxes can do all of this stuff, but most of them either don't know they can, or they just won't talk to them about it. So I use it as a way to separate myself from everybody else by saying, you know, so the other thing that mine's gonna do, like 10 minutes after they open it, they're gonna get an alert on their phone that says, are you done showing the property? Give us feedback. So I have mine set up to where it's gonna request feedback from them. So I'm gonna always know that way if when they're showing it, and I'm gonna request feedback to get there. Now, here's the other thing, you were worried about your pets. Now this one that I'm gonna share with you guys, most agents don't know they can do this, but they can. But even though you can do it, I would only use this, I would only tell her this if it made sense. Meaning if she was saying to me, I don't really want one of those lock boxes on there. We had one once before and it was a nightmare. And people came in the house unannounced, like, you know, I just don't want one. That's when I would do this to separate myself. I'd say, so Trudy, I understand, you told me up here you were concerned about people just accessing the house that you didn't really want coming in. And so, let me tell you how I'm different than most agents. So with my lockbox, the other thing that I can do, so it's gonna notify me, but a lot of good it does to notify me if you're there and they already walked in, right? I mean, oh yeah, I could call you, hey, somebody just opened the lockbox, and you're like, I know, I'm standing here in the shower and they're looking at me. Like, you know, a lot of good that's gonna do, right? So one of the things though that I'll do for you is I'm gonna put on what's called a call before showing code. So even though they have access to open the key box, without that code, they're not gonna be able to open it. So it's kind of just more protection to keep you, so you don't have to worry about that.
Just a question, isn't that kind of normal practice? I don't know, because
To do the call before showing
Yeah.
code on it? I don't think so.
no?
You can also set your lockbox, like
Yeah.
that one lady, she was a day sleeper because she worked nights, so I had it locked between 8 and 4, and then it was open from 4:30 to 8.
Perfect, yeah, that's another good one that you could use with that is, most agents wouldn't know they could do that. And so you could just say, hey, I'm gonna have it to where, we'll put on the MLS that you can't show the home between this time and this time. And not only that, but I'm gonna deactivate the lockbox, so you don't have to worry about having it there.
And you just call Supra,
Yeah.
that's our lockbox.
Yeah, same with ours, yeah, same.
So you can deactivate it during certain hours?
You can just say, disable it during these hours.
Yeah,
So-
and even if they go there during those hours, it'll decline.
Oh, is that
It won't get the
what
beep.
we do?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, so do you understand this section now? Are you good with it? Any questions on it? So when I said the hard part with me training you on it is, it's hard for me to tell you, here's what you do in here, because I don't know what they're gonna say up here. But so what you wanna do is just ask enough questions, and here's the truth, if you ask enough questions and do this well enough, you're gonna connect with them, they're gonna then feel like they can trust you, they're gonna feel safe, and you're gonna separate yourself to where you probably aren't gonna have to say a whole lot here. Meaning you're just gonna say, hey, one of the things you mentioned is you wanted me to call you every week. Yeah, I'll do that. Like that's the extent of the separate yourself. Yeah, I'll call you every week. I mean, let's say that they just were like, I had a really bad experience, my agent never called me, like that's really, really important. Let's do this. Let's put in an addendum to the listing agreement that if I don't call you 1 week, you can cancel your listing. Deal? Okay, great. I mean, I'm just, whatever I've got to do to kind of separate myself. Does that make sense? Okay. So questions, do you understand this? You understand what to do? You comfortable with it? Okay. Then next. What was next then? Do you remember on our list? Yeah, market and pricing. So in terms of the market, here's what I'm going to do on that. So now I'm going to start off with, on the market, I'm going to just talk with them about stats. I'm going to just give them some market stats. So you should be aware of the market stats. So just for example, you should be able to tell them, hey, right now in our area, whichever area you're in Valencia, we have X number of homes for sale. Or in Thousand Oaks, we've got there's this many homes for sale right now. And every month, this many are selling. And this is what's happening. And just even what Laura said earlier is like letting people know, hey, out there in the market right now, the public still feels like, oh, the inventory is really low. And that's true, it is. But we're also seeing a little bit of tightening to where sellers are starting to have to reduce their price. We were getting multiple offers as soon as it hits, but now we're not seeing that as much. Like homes are staying on the market longer, people are starting to have to reduce prices. So you just need to be, does that make sense? Well, that's what I'm telling you under this market stats section, is I'm just helping them see, here's what's going on in the greater market right now. Is we're seeing homes sit on the market a little bit longer, people are starting to have to do price reductions, which we haven't had to do for the past couple of years, but just be prepared, you might have to do that, okay? Then I'm gonna go to next, after the stats, we're gonna now talk about pricing. Now, in terms of pricing, in your book here, go to, it's page 87. So in terms of the pricing, so on page 87 gives you our pricing strategy. Now, this is what we have found, is if over a 3-week period the property hasn't sold, it is in almost all cases overpriced. So just know that. So here's scenario 1. If you've had, after 3 weeks, no showings and no offers, then the home is probably, needs to be, this says the home is 7 to 10% overpriced. It should probably say at least that much overpriced. How I usually say it is, if you go no showings, no offers in a 3-week period, you need to reduce the price between 7 to 10%. That's not saying that it's only 7 to 10% overpriced. It could be way overpriced, but it's saying you need to do a price reduction between 7 and 10%. Okay? In scenario 2, if you're getting some showings, and I would identify that as 1 to 3 a week, if you're getting between 1 and 3 showings per week, but no offers, then you need to reduce the price between 5 and 7%. Now, basically what that means is this. If a home is within 4% of the market price, it will generally get offers. But if it's more than 4% overpriced, buyers just pass on it and go somewhere else. That make sense? So if they're coming and looking but not making offers, you're probably 5 to 7% overpriced. So on that one, you can kind of say, if we're getting some showings and no offers, we are probably between 5 and 7. On the scenario number 1, you're at least 7 to 10% overpriced. Meaning, like let's say that the house is worth $550 and they listed at $750. It's more than 10% overpriced at that point. So you might have to do 2 price reductions following this strategy. But here's what you want to do is, and you can see down here where it says, the agent's job is to future pace, recast a clear vision, visit the seller's motivation, share statistics. That's part of how you get a price reduction, is you go back to the seller and say, so Trudy, you said you wanted to be in southern Orange County in 2 months, right? Well, it's been a month and we're not there. I mean, are you still wanting to be there next month? So you're recasting the vision of what was taking you there and how soon you got to be there. You still need to get there, right? Okay, well then we need to actually look at our pricing strategy. So that future pacing part of what, the best way to get a price reduction on a listing is to talk about it at the listing, when you're listing the property. And now, I have gone as far, actually, even as putting an addendum into the listing agreement that says that. So, when I list property, I will tell them, hey, in an addendum, I put in there, here's how we're gonna adjust the price. If we, after 3 weeks, no offers, no showings, we'll reduce the price between 7 and 10%. If we're getting some showings, and I put between 1 and 3 a week, but no offers, we're gonna reduce the price between 5 and 7%. Now, to me, the thing that's good of me putting between 7 and 10% is it kind of makes them, like if you just said, we're gonna reduce the price 10%, they're gonna fight you on it. But when you say, we'll reduce it between 7 and 10, they feel like, okay, well, I've got a little bit of choice on what we do. And they'll wanna do, well, truth is, when you get there, they don't wanna go 7. They'll be like, can't we do like 5 first? So, anyway, all right. So, does that make sense? So as part of this process, oh, I'm sorry, I blew it. Back up. Before I move to that spot, sorry, I left out a key component here. So once I'm done with this, before I move to pricing, the marketing and stuff. Because remember, first I want them to choose me, then together we're gonna choose the price. So before I get to pricing, I gotta find out have they chosen me. Does that make sense? So once I'm done with all of this, I'm gonna say, Trudy, how do you feel about everything we've talked about so far?
Great.
And how do you feel about Century 21?
I think it's good, a good choice.
Yeah, how do you feel about me as your agent?
Awesome.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being 100%, 1 being 0, how comfortable and confident are you in me being able to get your home sold? Scale of 1 to 10.
I'd say 8.
Okay, so an 8, okay, great. So what would have to happen for me to be in a 10?
I'll have to see how things go, and then afterwards, if you do everything you say, you'll be a 10.
Okay, so at this point though, you're comfortable and confident that I could get the job?
I'm willing to give you the opportunity.
Okay, so now notice what I'm doing. Ultimately, what I want to do is I want to ask her on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we at? And anything less than a 10, I'm going to stop and say, what has to happen for me to be at a 10? Now, some people will do kind of what she did. They're never going to give you a 10. They're going to say, oh, you're probably at a 9 or an 8. That's going to be a normal answer. 8 or 9. Okay, well, what do I have to do to be a 10? I don't know. Like, I mean, but if there is something, I want to know what it is. Because if she said, well, I just first want to know what your commission is. And once I know what your commission is, then you could be at a 10. Okay, so is it safe to say that if we can come to an agreement on commission, you'll list your home with me? Yes, great, then I'll talk price. But do you get where I'm saying? It's like, I am not moving on past here. Once we get to here, I'm stopping to ensure I'm getting the listing. And if I am, great, I'll move on. If not, then I'm not moving on to price.
Oh, so you didn't get them to sign it that time?
Well, if she's telling me
So if I
no,
would have said 8, but we haven't talked about pricing yet.
if she said we have an 8, but it's because we haven't talked about pricing, then I would say, well, let's assume we're gonna be able to agree on a price. So assuming we agree on a price, where are you at 1 to 10?
10.
Okay, great, then I'll go. But let's say you said no, so go
No,
ahead.
but I mean, will you, if they say yes, just go ahead and at that point, just pull those things in and have them sign?
Oh, you could, yeah, for sure, yeah, so how comfortable and confident are you in me to get the home sold? 10, okay, great. Well, I've just got the agreement here that says that, so let's go ahead and sign it. Now, she may say, well, yeah, but what price are we gonna do? Then I would say, oh, yeah, we'll talk about that, but we'll come to an agreement on price, I'm not worried about that, go ahead and sign it. Now, at that point, though, they may look and see commission and be like, whoa, wait a minute, this is 7%. Well, yeah, you wanted to get it sold, right? All right. Questions? So if she says anything besides a 10, I'm gonna say, what has to happen for me to be at a 10? And I'm just gonna, hey, so what would have to happen? So what kinds of things would somebody say at that point? I mean, you guys,
At that point, I
what are your
think
fears?
it's all about pricing, you know, commission, what are we gonna list the house for?
yep, that makes sense. And if that's what it is, great. Well, assuming we can come to an agreement on that though, will you list your home with me?
Yes.
Great, then let's talk about it.
Are some people just hesitant, they say, oh, I still wanna meet other real estate agents, I just don't wanna commit to anything.
Now, here's interesting thing. So I showed you guys, I don't know if you were here, but I showed these guys the NAR survey. Did you see that or no?
No.
Yeah, you didn't see that. On this NAR survey that I showed you guys, one of the questions that it asks is, what percentage of the time does a seller meet with more than one agent? And 66% of the time, they meet with one agent. So, to answer your question, 2/3 of the time, you're gonna be it. So, you don't have to worry about that. But the other third, yeah, so like on a for sale by owner expired, in those scenarios, you may get. So let's role play, so you be that person, okay? So, Tony, how do you feel about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel about me helping you get your home sold?
Well, I feel that I wanna see what else is out there as far as real estate agents and what they bring to the table as well.
Okay, sure, I can appreciate that. If I were you, I would probably wanna do that too. But on a scale of 1 to 10, like, I mean, what is it that I haven't covered that you feel like I need to?
Well, so far you've been pretty thorough with everything,
Okay.
but I'd still like to at least meet with another agent or two.
Okay, hey, I can appreciate that, for sure. So, well, let's do this then, Tony. Do you already have appointments with those agents?
Yes, I have one appointment so
Oh,
far.
okay, when is that?
That is tomorrow at 2.
Tomorrow too, okay. Well, so, do you think meeting with just one would be enough?
Meeting with one additional
Yeah.
person?
Well, that agent, do you think after you've met with them, that'll give you a good enough indication?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, let's do this then. You're meeting with them at 2?
Yes.
So let's plan on me coming back at 2:30 then, because if they do raise some questions, cause like you said, you know, you like what I had to say, but you just wanna see what else is out there. Hey, if there's something else out there that I'm not aware of, I'd love to know about it too. So how about I come back and meet with you at 2:30 after you're done with them, and then at that point we can pick up. So let's just pause where we're at in what we're talking about till after you've met with them.
Okay, now what about pricing? Are you?
Right, yeah, we'll talk about that after. Is that all right?
Sure.
Meaning, like, I'm gonna cover it with you, but I just wanna stop where we're at right now, because really, until we know if I'm the right one, like, the rest of that doesn't matter, really. So, let's see what that agent has to say, and then, but now you gotta promise me, you're not gonna sign with them just the same as you won't sign with me right now. Like, you're gonna give them the courtesy, so give me the courtesy to finish my presentation. Sound good?
Sounds good.
So, all right, well, I'll come back tomorrow at 2:30 and we'll pick up then.
Okay.
What if they said, well, you can finish it right now, finish the presentation now?
Well, the problem is, in order for me to finish it, we need to see if you've got other questions, we gotta answer those before I finish.
So you would just be really insistent, cause I see where Trudy's going, like
'Cause
that
it's
person could be really pushy, like, no, I wanna know your price, and I think you would hold a firm ground.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is I'm gonna tell you the price tomorrow that I think, but until we do that, I gotta make sure that, cause at the end of the day, if you don't trust me, you don't feel like I'm the agent, does it really matter what I think on the price? Like, why would you care? Right, so yeah, I'm just gonna hold firm, you know what, I'm gonna give you the price, I'm gonna give you everything you wanna know, I just wanna wait until after you've talked to that other agent first. How's that sound?
In reality, are you pretty firm about your commission?
I'm not gonna, well, what do you mean?
Will you hold at 6 or 7%?
Yes,
Okay.
very, very rare that I'm gonna go below that, very rare. Very, like,
And you'll walk away
yes,
if that person, because I know Carminda, if you don't mind my saying, you had a situation, and Carminda felt that she lost the listing because they wanted 5, and Carminda was holding at 6, correct,
Yeah,
Carminda?
because the manager said don't go below 6,
Yeah.
stick with
yeah.
6%.
And that would be tough, because I would probably
Well,
want to do what
so-
Carminda did.
well, yeah, so the question though, why did they want 5? I've got two questions from her.
They didn't ask to lower the commission, they didn't say anything about it. And then I just, kept on watching it, and then one morning, there it is, it was listed.
See, so good, so, you're not gonna like my answer, but part of the problem is you didn't separate yourself and create the value, is part of what I would say, is why, because otherwise they would have gone with you if they saw the value, they just didn't see it. But the other thing, you just answered the question though of why, when you were saying, well, can't you just go through and share pricing? Nope. If you would have, because see, once you gave them, here's what
I totally
my,
agree.
yeah, had you not given them, if when it came time to price, you had said, hey, are you comfortable with me? Do you feel confident that I'm the right agent, that I can help you get the home sold? And if they, because my guess is they would have said, well, we're still not really sure. So now here's the other thing. Part of what we want to do on this commission piece, if they're hesitant on doing that, you guys tell me. So you're showing properties to a buyer. What would you do, and Liz, I really want to hear from you on this because you've been around longer. You're showing properties to a buyer. You pull up a home that meets their criteria, you look down at the buyer agency commission, and it's 5%. What are you gonna do?
Well, I've never had that experience at 5%.
But let's just hypothetically say you did.
So it meets all their criteria.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course I'm gonna show it to them, but I'm not gonna force them to buy something.
Yeah, right, yeah, I wanna be clear on that, we're not gonna
Yeah.
force them to do it, but
You know, it's their choice in the end.
you're gonna really hope they do, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's,
What-
well, every house
okay.
you wanna hope.
So let me ask it a
I
little
mean, but
different.
I've never been in, I've never seen 5% commission. I'm normally just 2.5%.
Right, but I'm just saying if you did. So, what if the house was borderline? Like you're not 100% sure it works for them, but you're also not convinced it doesn't.
I would show them it because I've been showed properties where people are adamant they don't want a pool. No, we don't want a pool. And then they buy a house with a pool. So you just don't know.
Right. But my point being, so here's how I present it to a seller. We have to sell your house 3 times. We first have to sell your house to the agents to want to show it. And how do you think we do that?
By commission.
So meaning like, if you see, like, let's say you didn't have a buyer, but I listed a property and I came into the office today and said to you guys, hey guys, if you find a buyer for this house, it's 5% PAC.
They're gonna
Oh,
run.
buyer agency commission.
They're gonna run.
Do you guys call it PAC, or what do you call it?
No.
Operating broker?
Selling office commission.
Okay, 5% selling office commission.
Yeah, you try to find.
Are you gonna go try to find a buyer for it? Like you're, do I have anybody that this
Well,
might
you know,
work for? Hey,
the
guys?
new homes up the street, they're 5%,
Right,
and they're like 800,000.
right.
So,
We should go door knocking.
but you have, they're being built, so you have to bring the buyer to the builder. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, like if someone says, well, I'm looking for a new home, like, let's go, I walk them in, they sign the thing, and
Yep.
then you,
Yeah, for sure. So I've gotta sell the house 3 times. First to the agents, second to whoever's gonna buy the house, and then third to the appraiser. So I gotta sell your house 3 times. We gotta so this is not just a one and done thing. Like, so the first objective that we have is to sell your house to the agents in the community. Now, and this is how I would put it to them. Let me ask you, if you were told you could go do your job and get paid 1/3 of what everybody else is getting paid to do that job, how would you feel about it?
Not excited.
What if you were gonna get paid a little bit more than everybody else was?
Motivated.
So can you see, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, where it would be a good idea for us to pay a little bit extra to whoever brings in the buyer? See, in our market today, 2.5% is what most, is that what most are doing, is 2.5?
Yeah, I mean, there's like an occasional 3, because if the market, like you said, has changed.
Yeah.
There's price reductions and,
Yep.
things are not selling as fast, but there's a couple out there for 3. But
Okay.
if it definitely meets my buyer's criteria, I'm gonna put on the list.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say, okay, the norm in the market today is 2.5. So we need to want your property to be really attractive to the agents. So the best way that I can see we could do that is if we offered 3.5% to whoever brings in the buyer. How do you feel about that? How are they gonna feel about it? At this point, we haven't talked, I still haven't said anything about a commission. But now you gotta be careful with this, because what you don't wanna do is list it at 5 and now you're offering 3.5 to whoever brings in the buyer. You know, and you're keeping 1.5.
So they might say, well, that's.
But I gotta, if I can get them to see the value of, we should offer 3.5%. At least 3, but I would recommend we offer 3.5% to whoever brings in the buyer. Because how many are there out there at 3.5%?
Really none.
Probably none. So you're gonna stand out that way if we do that. How do you feel about that? And they're gonna feel fine about it, because at this point, they're thinking, well, 5%, they were gonna offer 3, yeah, that's great, good idea. Yeah, that's smart. Is probably what's kind of, they're gonna, oh yeah, that's a really good idea, I like that. Yeah, it's really good. Okay, so you're good with that? Offering 3.5%? Okay, good. So then now, let's talk about the pricing of the home then. So for me, I'm gonna kind of just leave it at that, and then I'm gonna hand them my agreement that says 7%. And they're gonna go, 7%? Well, yeah, you wanted to offer 3.5, right? Well, yeah. Oh, well, like, I keep the same that I offer. So, I mean, if you'd rather only offer 3, we can do that. I mean, we won't stand out as much, but we could change it to 6, that's fine. Or you do what we talked about before of, here's the services I offer at 5, here's the services I offer at 6, here's the services I offer at 7. Which one do you want to do? Well, I want all the services that you do at 7, but for 5. Well, I won't do it for 5, but I'll do it for 6. Okay. Now I get 6. Does that make sense? So, okay. I don't even know where I was at. I guess but you're good on don't move forward on price until they've chosen you. If they haven't chosen you, then,
So
hey,
let's say 10.
yep, yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do I fit in? And if the number is less than 10, stop and say, what do I have to do to be a 10? Like, I don't like being an 8. I want to be a 10. What do I got to do to be a 10? And
Well, what's the commissions out, you're from Utah?
Huh?
What's the commissions out there?
6 is pretty normal. But the reason I brought up the 5 is we have one agent in one of our offices. He hasn't currently been doing it because of where the market's been. But during 2010, 9 and 10, he was doing tons and tons of 8% listings, and he would offer 5, which I always told him, you're stupid, you should keep 4. But he would list a house at 8%, and he would tell them, I'm gonna put it on the MLS and offer 5%, but I still wanna keep 3, so we're gonna list it for 8 and offer
Yeah, that's never happened out here.
5. So, but here's the thing that was interesting, what was happening in the market in 2009 and 10?
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing, prices were going down, his listings, and I can pull it up on the MLS if you wanna see it. If I go back in the history and pull up his listings for the neighborhoods, every one of them sold at a higher price. So to some extent, I'm telling you that because I want you to see, because stop and think about it for a minute. So let's say, I'm offering 5%. Your buyer, you show it to your buyer because it works for them. They fall in love with it, not because of anything you did, they just love it and they want to write an offer. How much should we offer? Like if you're the agent,
Well,
if they want a lowball, are you gonna be like, they're probably not gonna go for that?
Well, it depends too. I mean, sometimes if it's a first-time buyer, they learn from their mistakes and they lose out a lot because they're writing lower offers. But if it's like the 5th offer and you haven't gotten it, I would say, look, let's write at least asking.
Yeah, but most agents are most agents, if they can see, I'm gonna get 5% if my client does this, are they gonna encourage their client to offer a lower price? Most agents. No, what are they gonna do?
Price or more.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, no, I don't, like, meaning, how committed is the agent to keeping that deal together?
Very.
Like during due diligence and all that kind of, meaning like, I'm gonna get 5% if this thing closes, or I can go get 2.5 somewhere else.
They'll fight to make that happen.
Do you get, I mean, that's why when you go look at his pricing in the neighborhoods where he sold his listings, during that time of the market, he was selling at top dollar compared to other properties in the area, because agents aren't gonna be, they aren't gonna wanna come in, like, they're more likely to negotiate with their client not to do stuff than, well, it's a pretty good deal, I mean, you know, like, and I'm not saying it's right, I'm just telling you what reality is. Most agents are gonna be influenced and swayed by that, and they're gonna encourage their client to write a full price offer versus negotiate, if they know they're gonna get paid a higher commission, so. And I'm not saying you guys should go do 8 and offer 5. I told him, you should do 4 and 4. Because even at 4, people would be excited, and then he at least would have still gotten 4. But he was saying, I'm gonna keep 3 and I'll offer 5 on the MLS. And he did tons of them, so.
That's even more ammunition for a FSBO, to prove to them, look what happens.
Yeah.
When agents, run the transaction, and then you pay the commission, they'll fight to get this house sold.
Yep, especially if they're getting paid a little bit higher of a commission than they typically would. Like, if you can get the seller to understand, that's part of the separating yourselves, getting them to see the value of it, versus like, well, here's the thing, let me tell you another quick story. So, I had a scenario, so it's becoming more and more common for us to see 2.5%. In fact, we have a company in Utah now that is a discount, since we're live on Facebook, I won't say the name of it, but there's a discount brokerage there that they are listing properties and putting them on the MLS and offering $1 to who brings the buyer. We'll pay you $1. Yeah, seriously, they're doing that though. Like and so because of that, it's kind of starting to force our buyer agency commissions down. So like, I'm like, bring on the slower market. Like because that'll get rid of a lot of these discount brokers that are around because of,
Sorry.
yeah, no, I know.
No, I'm just,
Oh,
this deal is,
So how do they sell, do they ever sell anything? Why would anybody even bother?
well, so what we're training the agents to do is to go to, because you can't, this discount company, you can't even get a hold of anybody. The sellers can't get a hold of the agents. And so a lot of times the agent ends up having to deal with the seller. They're just going in and saying, you're gonna have to pay the difference in the commission. So,
well, I just turned down a listing in Camarillo actually, and the lady, I could get, last guy could do it for 1%. I said, well, that's the last guy.
yeah,
You know, I know what I can do, and I don't work for 1%.
that's right.
You know, I bring a lot of value.
Yep, and that's the key. Like, you just gotta, once you decide you're worth it, is really a lot of what it
You know,
comes
then I'm
down to.
thinking, and it was for like a 400,000. I'm doing the math in my head. Okay, I got to drive to Camarillo 100 times. That's
Yeah.
$3,000 in gas.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, my time and money, and I know how I follow my deals. Maybe some agents aren't as anal or whatever, but I know what I'm going to put to my time and energy. And I said no, and I think she ended up listing it with like a Rex or something like that. Do you have Rex in Utah? Okay, it's they don't even pay the buyer's agent.
Yeah, which that's basically what this other
Yeah.
company, Homie.
But guess what?
Oh, whoops.
It's still on the market because
Yeah,
you don't,
right.
you don't insist.
Well, now here's the thing. Now, so here's how you want to handle that. So here's how you deal with that. When you come across one that says they'll list it for 1% or whatever. Hey, you know what? Here's why that should scare you to death. Is there are a lot of agents that will do that, but like if I go fishing and I'm catching a bunch of fish with worms and I run out of worms, what happens? Yeah, I'm not going to catch any fish. See, there are agents that want to use your house as bait. So they're going to put it on the MLS and offer very little commission because they don't want it to sell. It gets their phone to ring so that they can pick up buyers that then they go sell other houses to. So I guess the question is, do you want your house to be bait? Because those agents typically don't want your house to sell. They're using it as bait to catch buyers. And if your house sells, they don't have any more bait. So just like fishing, they don't wanna run out of worms, they don't want your house to sell. So unfortunately, like, be very careful, when you have somebody that will do it for 1%, be very careful. Because they're probably doing it only to catch the buyer on the other end.
Absolutely, and that's what they do.
That's right.
And there's a lot, I think there's getting more of those.
Well, but it's true. Oh yeah, so let me finish this story. So, the other thing I found is, so at one point when I told you I had left the company I had been with and then my business had started going down, well, part of why I left was I went over to a company that I could do less than a 6% listing. And so, because I had this thought one day of like, hey, if I went and did 4% listings and just kept one, I was like, I could just sell a ton of houses doing that. What I found though when I did that, and so this goes to your point of, what I found though is usually the people who you get a listing like that where you're keeping 1%, what ends up happening is they are the biggest pain in the butt. Like you.
Oh my gosh.
Is that not true?
They're the most high maintenance.
They're the
I
highest
mean,
maintenance
it's-
people.
It's kind of like, my analogy is like, I had a garage sale and I will never do one again. I had
Yeah,
my
that's a
son's
great, yeah.
$40 Levi's for $1. People were bidding me down for $0.25.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I'll give you
no.
25 cents for it.
They're worth $1, they're Levi's, right? And guess what? If I don't sell them, I'll send them to Goodwill and get a bigger write-off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
but-
like it's those people that in their mindset, everything wants to be a bargain, or they just have a different mindset.
Yep.
It's.
Yeah, and so to me, you're better off to walk
Yeah.
away, is to answer your question, because what happened with me is I had listed one at 4%, it was somebody in my neighborhood, and then there was some issue with the deal, and they're like, well, can't you cut your commission? And I was like, I'm already getting 1%, like, I was like, I'll never do it again, never. And like, at that point I realized, yes, you could maybe get listings by doing that, but it's not worth it, because they are the highest maintenance people, so.
And they expect everything. right?
Okay, back to this. So, market, so now that we've established that Trudy's going to list her house with me, now I'm gonna hit the stat stuff, we already talked about the pricing, and then the last is the CMA. So now I'm gonna go through the CMA and I'm gonna talk to them about the CMA. So here's basically what homes similar to yours have sold for, here's what the homes that are better than yours have sold for, here's the homes that are worse than yours have sold for, here's kind of the price that I think yours should be, here's how many homes are for sale. Like, I'm just gonna go through the CMA stuff. Now, in terms of CMA, I've mentioned this, but I just wanna kind of say it again, it is an art, not a science. And so the best thing you can do in terms of CMAs is, and I told you guys this earlier in the week, go see property. Even if you don't have a buyer to go show property to, go look at some houses. Every week you should be looking at some houses. Pick one of them, run a CMA on it just for yourself, and then keep an eye on that property and see what does it sell for versus what you thought it would sell for. And just see, is it priced right? Is it good price? Is it low price? And then keep an eye on it and see. The way you're gonna get good at pricing property is you just gotta do it. You gotta go see property first, and then just run CMAs on it.
Isn't there something on the C21 online that does like a price guesstimation on a property?
Well, the toolkit CMA will kind of do that,
Okay.
but the challenge with any of those programs, any of them, is it's garbage in, garbage out. Meaning if you put in good comps, you'll get a good price come out, but if you put in bad comps, it's gonna give you a bad price. So for me personally, and it's more personal preference, I don't even rely on any of those programs. I like to just look at it like through the eyes of like, if I were a buyer, and again, based on if you're out looking at properties, you'll be able to come in and go, you know what, there's properties around here that, based on what I've seen, yours should be this. Like, to some extent, when you're showing properties to buyers, once you've shown them 3 or 4, they're very intuitive when they see one that's overpriced. They just know, no, compared to everything else. Does that make sense? Okay. So what other questions on this?
Do you have problems with that, because I know everybody looks at Zillow and all that kind of stuff, does that come to your, oh, Zillow's that, it's like this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Zillow, in Utah, we are a non-disclosure state. So, what that basically means is Zillow's even worse there because they don't have access to any data, so they're totally guessing. So, yes, you're gonna run into that all the time. Well, Zillow said this. Okay, but I've also seen Zillow be the opposite, so
Exactly, I went on one, I said, well, Zillow says this, but I ran comps and your house is worth
it's worth way more.
$25,000. Because Zillow doesn't know if you've had upgrades or
Exactly.
granite or marble or,
Yeah, it's just a guess.
yeah, it's going by, it's just a guesstimate.
Yeah.
My daughter loves Zillow.
Oh,
Her
Wow.
house, well, it was my house. I sold it to her, but it listed her house as $4.8 million.
oh,
So, I'm missing a whole lot of money.
yeah, you're like, hey, I didn't realize I was giving you such a good deal, right? Yeah, that's funny.
Well, exactly, like my model just sold for $675 and Zillow says my house is worth $605 and I have an extra bedroom and a bigger lot, I'm like, that's wrong.
Yeah,
I'm
I
going
just always,
$699.
I just always tell people, sometimes it's right, sometimes it's
Yeah.
not. I've seen it high, I've seen it low. It's giving you a range. And like my sister's house, I had listed my sister's house. This was a number of years ago when the estimates were kind of first coming out. I had listed her house, and one of her neighbors told her, "Oh, I went on to Zillow and looked, and you're probably like $200,000 underpriced." And my sister called me. Hey, they said that we're like 200,000 underpriced. And I'm like, if your house was 200,000 underpriced, number one, I would have already bought it. First off, but two, we would have had people knocking down the door to buy it. Like, it's just okay. Last thing that we want to do then is we need to close.
Russ, the only way your pricing is wrong is if you put too many zeros in the MLS.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the house is 450,000 and it says 4.5 million.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing is, when people say, I don't want to give it away, there's like no such thing as like, keep in mind, just so you know, you cannot underprice a property. Meaning, let's say that it's worth $750 and we listed it at $550. Now, there's a caveat to it. As long as it is available on the market, like it's been on the MLS for at least 72 hours, if you're 200,000, I mean, you guys tell me, what would happen if you saw a property that's $200,000 underpriced?
Bidding war.
Yeah, and then what happens?
And then it'll be over 200,000.
That's right, that's what, meaning like, I usually will, when people say, well, I don't want to give it away, I just say, look, you don't have to worry, I've never given one away yet, and I don't plan to now. But I've sold a lot of iPhones on eBay, and like every year when the new one would come out, I would go put my phone on eBay, and I would always start the bidding at $1. I never sold it for $1. I always sold it for whatever the market value was. The whole reason eBay works is because people bid the price up to where it should be. Once it gets to where it should be, then it slows down a little. But like I've never sold, I have probably sold 10 at least phones on eBay, and I always start the bidding at $1, and I've never sold them for $1. They always sell for what the market value that if you put it on Craigslist or something else would. So like a house is the same thing, as long as you put it out there for people to see it. Now, if you listed it for 200,000 and didn't tell anybody, which quite honestly, this last year I bought one that a fixer-upper that I fixed and flipped. So next time you have that 600,000 and the 1.5 million, call me. But it was a scenario. An agent walked into my office and said, "Hey, I'm listing this home, and they're probably going to list it at 300,000, and fixed up. I figured it was probably worth $5. So it was a $200,000 thing. Now it needed a ton of work, so we spent over $100,000 fixing it. But like I was like, I want it. Like, when are you putting it on the MLS? Because like I knew the moment it hit the MLS, I wouldn't be able to get it for 300,000. So like it's just know if it's underpriced and it goes on the MLS, you're going to end up with multiple offers that will drive the price up. So a seller doesn't. And what Liz said is so true. Underpricing it a little bit has a tendency to drive the price above what your list price would have been. Then, like you'll sell it potentially for more than if you listed it at what market value is. Like and to some extent, like I have a brother-in-law that he finally had to get off of eBay because he would go on and look for deals, and he would start to bid on the deal. But then we have like this competition that kicks in of I'm not letting them outbid me. And so they will just he would keep bidding, and pretty soon he was paying higher price than he could have just bought it for because of the competition of it. So to some extent, we would be smarter to go in and tell every seller, you should underprice your home by
Yeah.
10 or 15%. We should be way underpriced. Because then tons of people show
It
up.
creates a frenzy.
It does. So true. All right, last is close. So here's what I'll tell you. If you have done everything else we've talked about, the close is just natural. Like, meaning, if you did what we said back here, where I said, so Trudy, how do you feel about me as the agent? So if we can come to an agreement on price, are you good with listing your home with me? So now, we did pricing, great. Now we've talked price. So let's see, what price did you want to list your home at? What price do you think we should list it at to get it sold?
Are you asking me really?
Well,
Making
you can make up a
number?
number, I don't care.
I don't remember.
Give me one.
700,000.
Okay, so 700, hey, I think that's a great price. So if we listed it at 700,000, you're comfortable and confident in me being able to get the home sold?
Sure.
Great, let's go ahead and get the paper signed and get started. Like, I mean, that's the end of it. You don't need these fancy closes. Like, if you've done a good presentation and done this stuff along the way where I've already been saying, hey, so I'm gonna call you on Friday because I call all my sellers on Friday, so let's plan on Friday. What time did you want me to, like, all those little things along the way. Now I've gotten here and we've already said, if we can agree on price, you'll list your home with me? Yes, okay. So we've agreed on price, should we get started right now?
Absolutely.
Great, let's get it signed. Like, that's really all there is to it. Now, let me just go through one thing on closing. In your book, because I just want you guys to see it, go to page 80. It's called the master close. So in the event that, now when I said, if you do all this presentation right, the close should be easy, it should be. But in the event it's not, then you've got this master close. And honestly, this is the best way. If you're getting objections from the people, this is how you deal with it. And honestly, it's probably the best thing I've seen. So it shows here the master close. So repeat and affirm the objection. So if they said, we want to think about it. Okay, you want to think about it? That's great. This is a big decision. If I were you, I'd feel the same way. Then you want to ask 3 questions. So Trudy, getting the home sold is a priority though, right?
Yes,
And it's important to you that you make the most money possible from the sale?
of course.
Okay, so do you find value in having the largest company in the world to promote your home and market it?
Sure.
So I'm confused. Help me understand what's stopping us from getting your home sold.
Nothing, let's sign the
No, just say we want to think about it.
papers.
We just want to think about it. So you want to think about it. Okay, now this is where the key comes in. This isolate the objection. So what I want to do is I want to isolate I want to find out, is that the only objection? So I'm going to just follow what it says here. So Trudy, we're just exploring options. Let's set that aside for just a minute. Is there anything else that's stopping you? So let's assume you've thought about it overnight. Is there anything else holding you back?
Yeah.
Okay, so if no, then great. If she would have said yes, then, well, let's say yes. Say,
Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure about a 7% commission.
Yeah, the commission is kind of high.
Okay, so what else?
That's it.
That's it. So really, you want to think about it because of the 7%
I just
commission.
want to do a little research and think it over and just be more comfortable with it.
Okay, just think it over. Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, if I were you, I would totally feel that way. I can understand that. So let me ask you, now here's the key. Most agents don't do this. Notice it says, ask the client for their solution to the objection. So, Trudy, what would you recommend that we do? So you said you're a little hesitant on the 7%. I mean, what would you recommend?
Lower it.
To what?
I would do it for 6.
Okay, so 6. What about 6.5?
What about 6?
You'll sign the contract right now?
I will.
Okay, let's do 6. Like, that's what I would do. But notice, here's the thing. Ask them for their solution. Like, there's too many times that we immediately jump down 1 whole %. Like, why not say, hey, tell you what if I reduced it for, so you ask them for their solution. So she gave me her solution. If you like their solution, take it. So, like, for instance, what I was hoping she would say is, well, can you come down a little bit off 6%? Yeah, how about 6 3/4? Like, I'll try just a little. Don't automatically go 1 whole %. Like, I mean, we're talking $7,000 on it. Now, here's the other side of it, like, here's the other piece for me. Is I really do believe, especially like, so on, the 1% on a house, like, I feel like I can make that up in negotiations. So like, if they're saying to me, you know, I'm okay with 6, but I don't know about 7, well, let's do this then, let's price the house 1% higher, because I can think I can negotiate that. Now, because remember, back in our pricing strategy, if a home is within 4%, so let's say I felt comfortable at 700,000, like going 707 is not like gonna scare everybody away all of a sudden, is it? Or 710 or something.
Yeah.
So like I just say, look, part of where I can earn this 1% is during the negotiations. I'm gonna be able to negotiate that. Like, and remember, part of the questions we asked back here, so she wants to list it at 700. So, but Trudy, what price won't you go below?
700. No, 680.
680. Okay.
690.
So she'll go to 680 or 690. Let's say 680, but she wants to list it at 7. So like in my mind, I can negotiate, if she's willing to go to 680 and we get an offer, I can probably negotiate somebody to 690. Like, anyway, I'm just giving you kind of my thoughts. But
I mean, is
back
that
to
what
this.
really happened? I mean, I don't know. So, like, that's a pretty big gap between 680 and 700, I think.
Do you? What do you
I
guys
don't know, is it?
I was gonna say, not at that price range, I don't think it
No.
is. I don't think that's a big
know.
gap.
When she was, you know, debating with you about your commission too, couldn't you go back to the buyer's commission? Well, then that means we have to lower the buyer's commission.
Thank you, yes, for
And
bringing
And
up,
then
yes.
we're not gonna have so many
Thank
motivated
you,
buyers.
thank you for bringing that up, because that is exactly what a lot of times that I will do, is I'll be like, okay, but if we do that, like, that means we're only offering, because I'm keeping 3.5, so that we're gonna only be offering 2.5 to the
Wait a
buyer.
minute, why are you keeping 3.5?
Well, because I'm the one doing all the work.
Is it usually that way? I mean, I don't know.
No, there's not a right answer.
Is it usually down the middle, like if the commission 6? it's 3 and
Typically,
3?
yeah,
Or is
typically.
it seller 3.5, buyer?
What are you guys seeing right now?
I don't
I
know.
always see 2.5 to the
But what's the listing?
What's
that you
your
usually
listing
keep?
commission?
2 or 2.5?
Is it 6 or is it 5?
We split it.
If it's 6, it's 3.5.
That's 2.5, oh, really?
Oh, okay,
2.5
so you
to who?
do get a 0.5%.
Oh, okay, yeah, but I think that's market
That's
driven
what
right
I've
now.
heard too,
Like,
yeah.
well, in fact, in Utah, we had one that,
I mean, that's if you get a 6% list.
yeah, in Utah, we had one just the other day that, I had an agent come storming into my office and she goes, hey, do you know this agent? And I said, yeah. And she said, he's offering 2% on the MLS. Like, we're not a discount company. And to some extent, like, I am in agreement with that of like, we have to protect our commissions, because my fear is in Utah, what's coming is what you guys already have. Like, you guys are ahead of the curve than what we are. And so when I see it in Utah, I'm like, we gotta fight to try to keep these more at 3, because before long, I know we're gonna be doing the same thing. So anyway, I walked into this agent, after she said that, she's like, he's only offering 2%, that's just ridiculous. I said, I'll go talk to him. So I went and found the agent, I'm like, hey, like, and this is truly my belief, and I walked up to him and I said, hey, so did you tell your client you're doing him a disservice? And he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, well, you're listing on this particular address. Did you tell them you're doing them a disservice? He goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're only offering 2% on the MLS. Like, did you tell them agents are not gonna show your house because I'm offering 2%? And he's like, no. And I said, well, FYI, one of the agents in our own office just came and told me, I'm not showing you this house unless I have to. So it's kind of what Liz said. Like, most agents are like, I'll show it to my client because it meets their needs, but I'm gonna try every other house first before I show them.
This is huge what you're teaching us, because at the listing appointment, I mean, I would use that as an argument all
That's
day
right.
long.
And so you can just say, hey, we can reduce that, but it's probably gonna reduce what your house sells for, because the buyers, remember, we gotta sell it to the buyer's agents, and they're not gonna like it as much at 2.5 as they would at 3. I
I've
mean,
never not gone under 2.5.
Yeah,
And then sometimes I do give 3 and split it.
yeah.
Or if it's not selling, you give a little extra 0.5 and then you take a little less on your end, but.
Yeah, I think the way the market has been, though, it hasn't been uncommon. So this guy, I went up to him and I said, did you tell your seller? And he's like, no. And I said, well, why are you doing that? I said, you need to be offering 3. That's not fair to your seller. Offer 3. And he goes, okay, I'll talk to him. And I said, well, what did you list the property for? He said, 6. So he was keeping 4, offering 2. And I was like, are you kidding me? He said, no. And I'm like, dude, you are trying to make extra money for yourself at the expense of your seller. Change it to 3 right now. Like I did. I was like,
He's hurting himself in the long run.
that's what I told him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a saying in like the stock market of the pigs get fat, but hogs get slaughtered.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like, I'm like, you're being a hog, like.
Well, and then his thinking might be, well, if an agent doesn't bring it, I'll bring my own buyer.
Yeah, I'm sure that's probably part of it, but, which again is back to who you're looking out for. And-
Yeah, because now he's fighting for both sides.
Yeah, so, yeah, I'm 100%, that's a great way to argue it with them, it's like,
That is a good one.
I could do it for less, but you're gonna hurt yourself because agents won't show your property, so. All right, I didn't finish this, so solution. So the best thing is ask them for the solution first. So when they're giving you a, hey, I'm not sure, okay, well, hey, what would you recommend that we do? And the reason is you might like their solution better than what you would have offered. Meaning, like maybe you would have said, I'll go down to 7, or from 7 to 6, but she says, well, would you do 6.5? And then don't just maybe, oh yeah, just, I guess, I'll do it. Yeah, for you, I'll do it. You can't tell people that I did that, but I'll do it for you. Okay? All right, but in the event that you don't like their solution, then you can offer a concession. So if she said, so let's say, what's your solution? Well, I don't know, I just want to think about if I want to pay that much. Well, then now I may want to just say, well, what if I did it for 6.5? What if we reduce it from 7? I still give you all the same services, but I'll do it for 6.5.
Sounds good.
Okay, great,
That's
let's
fair.
do it. So you'll offer a concession, then close once all the objections are resolved, and then congratulate them. Hey, you made a right decision, and you're gonna be really happy with how this turns out. Make sense? So that's really in terms of the close, keep that one in mind. That one's the best close you can have, is just when they give you an objection, hey, let's talk about it. So, what else is holding you back? Well, let's set that aside. So essentially that master close is, we want to think about it. Okay, well, let's put that aside. Let's assume you've thought about it. What else would be any concerns that you have? No, that's it. We just want to think about it. Okay, well, what would you recommend? And if she has a good recommendation, great. If not, then I'll give one.
Sometimes with the price for me, I put like a little, like between $660 and $680, because I want to see where they're at. I
Yeah,
don't give an exact number, and then they'll go, oh my gosh, that's what we were thinking, between those numbers.
yeah.
Okay, I've just never gone in and say, oh, I think it's, $675.
Yeah, so I'm the same. I like, and in fact, I like asking them, based on the solds, saying, now that you've seen these, what price do you think
Yeah, that's about it.
is gonna get your home to be sold? But then they usually will, well, I don't know, you're the expert, and then, hey, yeah, you're right, I study homes and prices every day, but I just wanna get an idea, and I'll tell you if you're right or wrong, I just wanna see what your thoughts are after you see this. And-
On the CMA, on the last page, there's what your house should sell for, and then I'll say, well, that's what I have here. And they'll
Yeah.
go, oh, okay.
Yeah,
So if they don't, you can like.
So that's where that's.
You could tear that out, no, just kidding.
yeah, exactly,
I'm way
just don't
off.
show it to them. So, okay, what other questions on listing presentation do you have? How do you feel about it?
Much, much better.
Good.
It's gonna take practice.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say, is the next step is you guys need to get somebody and sit down and practice it.
Yeah.
And then what you're gonna practice it is, so thanks for letting me come, acknowledge, promise, hey, let me take a quick look at the house, hey, now, let me tell you what we're gonna do. First, I'm gonna ask you some questions, find out what it is that you're wanting to accomplish, what you expect from me, I'll share with you what I expect from you. Then I'm gonna share with you what I do to get a home sold. After that, we'll talk about the market and pricing and all those things. And then if you're comfortable and confident, I'm gonna ask you to sign a contract, okay? Okay, well, great, so now, tell me, ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish in getting, and then bam, just sit down and practice asking the questions and just going through it. Now, the other thing, so we'll go back to page 81. Pages 81 through 83, 84, is everything that I have written on the board.
Where's that, are remember we've done a couple scenarios, what does it say where you ask them, well, I know you're selling house, but are you gonna buy it, and it's just that you start buying? What part of it is that?
Well, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Like, they're gonna, of course, they're selling house, where are they moving to, and you want us to
Oh.
be there? Where does that fall in the,
Gotcha. I would do it once, probably once I've closed on getting the listing, then I would be saying, okay, so now you had mentioned to me before that you were, and really truthfully, depending on the scenario, I may have even talked to her about it. So like, let's say when she was a for sale by owner, I called her on the phone, why are you selling your home? Oh, we're moving to South Orange County. Oh, hey, that's awesome. I actually have a really good agent that I work with down there. I can have them give you a call. When's the best time for them to call you to help you out on finding a house down there? I probably would do it, if they're leaving the market, I would probably do it before I've even gone out there. But if they're staying in the market, then after closing, really, probably what I would say is, so Trudy, you're wanting to just stay here in the area, sell this home and buy a new one. What's gonna be easier for you, owning 0 homes for a little while or 2 homes at the same time? I mean, really, I'm just asking, can you afford to own this with
Yeah, well, I
Wally?
don't wanna, what would I do in the interim, so I want her to be settled, so 2 homes.
Okay, great, then I'm gonna worry about helping her find a house. But some people are like, well, no, I can't afford, I'm not gonna be able to qualify to own both. Okay, well then, what we need to focus on is getting this sold first, then we'll go find you a house.
cause I remember, where was it, the one that you were practicing, wasn't it one of the very top things? This is, and where are you going and all that? Do you remember they asked? I'll look at the script and see if I can find it.
I don't think there's anything in here for that.
Yeah, I think Mike, haven't had.
Okay, so yeah, next step is just for you guys to practice it. You got, this is the stuff that you're just, professionals practice. You're gonna have to practice. So, all right. I'm gonna introduce the SOI stuff, and then so we got about 10 minutes, and then we'll go to lunch. So I'm gonna cover one little piece first, and then we're gonna do lunch, and then we'll come back and finish it up with the good stuff.
This is if we do one thing, do this, right?
This is the one, if you're not gonna do anything else I taught you, do this. Okay. So, we're gonna talk about now your sphere of influence. Okay? So we're gonna get into SOI. We're gonna cover the SOI stuff. Now, before we do that though, I first wanna make sure, we're gonna talk about 3 groups of people. And I first wanna make sure you understand really even what a client is, okay? So the first thing that we're gonna talk about here is a client. Now, in terms of a client, when I say what makes somebody a client, what I don't mean is when you went to real estate school, their definition. Because, now, I'm not taking away from their definition, I'm gonna actually add to it. So think in terms of that, but what would make somebody, what would the person have, be, or do in order to be a client? So you can start with what you learned in real estate school, I'm fine with that, but we're gonna add to it. So what would somebody have, be, or do to be a client?
Well, to me, it's already someone who's interested in real estate.
Okay,
They're already starting to ask me questions.
okay. So say more about that, what do you mean?
Curious about my services, that I'm thinking of listing my home, or I'm thinking about buying a home.
Okay. And, okay, so here's what I'm gonna call that. I'm gonna write it here as need. I'm gonna tell it to you longer than that, but they have to have a need. Now, here's how I want you to write it down. In order for someone to be a client, they have to have real and present needs that can be met. Real and present needs that can be met. So in order for somebody to be a client, they've got to have real and present needs that can be met. Now what does that mean? So when I say that, what to interpret that? Real and present needs that can be met.
You have the funds and you're ready to buy a house, or you're ready to sell your house within the next 3 months, or.
Perfect, that's exactly right. Is if they have real needs that can be met, like it's realistic. You want to buy a house, what you're expecting to pay for that house and the amenities in it is realistic. They're real and present needs that can be met. Okay, what else? There's 4 things that make somebody a client.
Motivation.
Okay, good, I'm gonna call it now. So for me, they're committed to buying or selling now. They're committed to selling their house now, or if they're a buyer, they're committed to buying right now. Now, when is now?
Right now.
Okay, here's how I define now.
3 to 6 months.
For me, now means if it's a seller and we put their home on the market and somebody brings them a full price offer, they'll accept it. That's now. So it doesn't necessarily mean tomorrow, but as soon as we get an offer that meets your needs, you'll accept it. If it's a buyer, as soon as we find this home, the one that has the clear and present needs that can be met, when we see it, you'll go make an offer, and you're gonna offer a fair price, not like way low. I had one client that, this guy that I was working with, and I'd show him houses, show him houses, show him houses. In fact, actually, to tie this all together, it was before I learned this process. So I'm showing him houses, showing him houses, showing him houses. He lived in Utah County, which is south of Salt Lake County, but would commute to Salt Lake County for work. So for him, he was driving basically what you guys did to get here. He was driving 45 minutes every day to get to work. And he was just like, I'm getting divorced anyway, I'm kind of tired of making that commute. If I'm getting divorced anyway, I might as well live close to work. So I want to buy a house. So I'm trying to help him find a house, but he was an engineer, and so very analytical. And I showed him how he just kept being like, I just want to find a really good deal. I got to find a really good deal. Well, I finally one day find him a really good deal. So I tell him, hey, like this property is like underpriced. Like this is an awesome deal. What do you want to offer? And now this is close to 20 years ago, so a long time. So when I tell you the price, like don't, like it's a mobile home for you guys now. But back then, the list price on it was $150, and I was like, this probably worth $165.
That's funny.
I know. Today it's probably, you'll still laugh. Today that house is probably worth $350, but.
We're still laughing.
I know. And here it would be, in your market here, it'd probably be $650 or $7. But anyway, so I say to him, like, this is a good deal. You should jump on this. And I say, what do you want to offer? And what did I say the list price was? 157?
150.
Oh, sorry, it was 157 is what the list price was, sorry. And I told him it's at least worth at 165, 170 probably. So 157 is the list price, but he wanted to offer 150. And I'm like, well, but it's already a good deal. So it's kind of your $40 jeans for $1 that he wants to give a quarter. And I'm like, but it's already a good deal. Like I told him, my concern is it's just hit the market. If we hurry, you could probably get it for 157. If you offer 150, we're probably gonna end up in a bidding war. Well, let's just offer 150 and see what happens. So we offer 150, and just as I said, as soon as I sent it over to the agent, she called me. Hey, just so you know, we've got another offer coming in. Tell your client we want their highest and best. So I go back to him. They want your highest and best. Like, unfortunately, I told you, like, this is a good deal. You've been looking for a good deal. We got it. You just got to hurry and get it. What do you want to do? Let's just leave it at 150 and see what happens. Well, I already know what's going to happen. You're not going to get the house. Now, once I learned this process and took him through it, what I found out, here was what I found out. He was not a real buyer. Now, I already kind of figured it out, but here was the problem. So he's getting divorced. His wife had kicked him out, but he had rented the house right next door. So even though he wasn't living at home, essentially his kids, like if right next door, the kids could just run out and go over to his house and, hey Dad, what are you doing? Oh, okay, go back home. Like it was so convenient that way, and it was so much that, but what he realized, as soon as I move, I'm not gonna have that. So he hated the commute, wanted to move, but in his mind, it had to be such a good deal that he would make so much money that it was probably worth not seeing his kids so much, which didn't really exist, so he was staying where he was at. So after I learned this process and I took him through it and I figured that out, I said, you know what? I'm not the right agent for you. My business is picking up. I'm going to refer you over to Tony, because he specializes in people that don't buy.
Good old Tony.
I'm just teasing. I'm joking. Tony's going to be an awesome agent. But so I referred him out to an agent in the office. I really did do that. I went and found a guy, I'm like, hey, I got a buyer for you.
Aw.
And I said, just pay me a referral fee if he buys. The idea, I was like, he'll probably never buy, but if he does happen to, at least I'll get paid. No lie, 5 years later, I get a phone call. Answer it, and he goes, hey Russ, this is so-and-so, do you remember me? And I'm like, yeah. I didn't say it that way, but I was like, yeah, I remember. But I'm like, yeah, hey, how's it going, what's up? And he's like, hey, well, you had set up the MLS so that it would email me properties when they came on the market. I have an agent that's trying to help me find a house, and he doesn't know how to do that. If he called you, could you help him? I was like, oh, yeah, sure. I was like, yeah, absolutely, because I'm like, I don't want to help the guy 5 years later. So I'm like, yeah, I'll be happy to do that. FYI, did you ever buy a house? Nope. I was like, figured it out. Okay, so now means when you find the property that meets your needs, you'll write the offer and buy it now. You're not gonna say, oh, we gotta, hold on, whatever. Okay, what else would make somebody a client? You haven't given me the obvious one that you learned in real estate school. There you go. They're committed, now here's how I want you to write it down. They're committed to working exclusively with you. They're committed to working exclusively with you. Now, how do they demonstrate that they're committed to working exclusively with you? They sign a buyer broker, right? Or if it's a seller, they sign the listing agreement. So they are committed to working exclusively with you. So they're committed to working exclusively with you, which, by the way, signing that document doesn't mean anything. Meaning, it is a legally binding document, but what I mean by that is if they're not committed to working with you, they'll sign it and go work with somebody else. Or if they're committed to working with you and they haven't signed it, they'll still use you if they're committed to it. So the paper is just a document to verify what is already true. So, but they have to be committed to working exclusively with you. Now this last one's probably going to be more obscure. I'll probably have to give it to you. But this one's more about management. How do you manage a client? Now the way that we manage it, which I already gave you a little bit of a hint over here on the seller when I said I like to sit down with them once a month, they need to be tethered. Tethered. Now the way we tether a client to us is an appointment. So you can't have a client if you don't have an appointment. So meaning, if I list somebody's house, I always wanted to schedule that next appointment to go to sit down with them. In the event we haven't sold it in a month from now, I want to come back and we're reducing the price. So I have them tethered to me through an appointment. So if you're working with a buyer, you should never leave an appointment with a buyer without scheduling the next appointment. You should never leave an appointment, bless you, with a seller without scheduling the next appointment. You should always, with a client, you should always be scheduling the next appointment. Okay. Now, let's talk about the next group. The next group is what we are going to call prospects. As we go prospecting, these are prospects. Okay. Now, think of it this way. A prospect is not a client. So these are the things that make someone a client. What makes someone a prospect is they're deficient in one or more of these. So if I have, let's say I've got a prospect or somebody that I'm working with that is, has clear and present needs that can be met, they're ready to go now, but they haven't signed a buyer broker with me. In my mind, I don't have a client, I have a prospect. Now, the way we manage clients is through appointments. So I said a prospect is deficient in one or more of these. So let's say that I have somebody that I have agency with, they're committed to, or buyer broker with, they're committed to buying now, and they have clear and present needs that can be met, but I don't have an appointment with them. I don't have a client, I have a prospect. So how would I manage my prospects? Because a prospect is deficient in one or more of these. So how would I manage them? And because maybe it's the appointment that I don't have, so I can't manage a prospect with appointments because that might be what I don't have. So how would I manage them? If you had, what?
Follow-up?
Yeah, perfect. So it's through contact. How often should we contact them? 1 time per week. Good job. Now, so think of it this way. Prospects are becoming clients. So when you're prospecting, what you're trying to find is, you're trying to find people who are committed to working exclusively with you, that have clear and present needs that can be met, they're ready to do it now, and then you get an appointment with them. Then they're a client. But until you get an appointment with them, they're a prospect. And I need to contact them once every week. See, so here's the idea. So back to even like a seller. If I had a seller that I've listed their home, but I don't have an appointment with them, I need to be contacting them once a week. Does that make sense? If I get a buyer and they haven't signed an agreement with me, I don't have an appointment, they're ready to buy now, and they have clear and present needs that can be met. If you don't contact them once a week, they'll go buy with somebody else. Does that make sense? So prospects are becoming clients, or they are becoming this other thing, or we drop them. So a prospect is sitting here, we're trying to get them to become a client. If we can't, then we'll try to get them to become this. If we can't, then we're gonna drop them. Now, the last one, which you're gonna love this, Lori, is what we call suspects.
Ah.
These are your suspects.
Felony or misdemeanor?
What's that?
Felony or misdemeanor?
I don't know. Well, hopefully it's a felony, because it has to be over $10,000 to be a felony, doesn't it?
I think California.
Is it, what do you mean by that?
So, for California, it's, let's say theft or whatever, it's, it's $1,000.
Really? I think in Utah it's gotta be over 10,000, it's not a felony. Yeah, no wonder everybody moves there to steal.
Yeah.
All right. So, what we're gonna spend the rest of today talking about, we're gonna stop now for lunch. But when we come back, I'm gonna give you 4 criteria, and actually the word I like to use for this is 4 protocols. What's a protocol?
Something you do before?
So,
Like
yeah, I was,
steps or steps to.
yeah, think of it as a required condition.
Yeah.
Because I